What's up, Frank?
Hey, buddy, how you doing?
What's going on?
Oh, another lovely day. I even had my phone for 2 days. It drives you crazy when you just have no contact with people.
Well, if you were on vacation, it would be perfect.
I should have left.
You should have went on. You should have just got on a plane.
Exactly. Then I really would have been lost.
Is this your work phone or is it your?
Yeah, it's my everything phone. I only have one phone.
Oh yeah.
They said it got caught in the business Verizon portal, and they had a big outage this weekend, and there's a lot of people who are caught, and it's not something they can push through. It has to be addressed one at a time.
What, like your service is down or your phone is broken?
Just my phone. We have all the other phones work. Just mine. And they said 24 to 48 hours. I go, and this was this morning after I already didn't have it for 2 days.
You should buy a burner.
But like you said, I don't have a phone. I can email people, so they know that.
Yeah. I know.
Good evening, gentlemen.
Hey, buddy, how you doing?
What's up, Tim?
Doing well. How are you guys?
Good. You build the high school yet?
It's almost done.
You put the roof on? Yeah.
They dropped the drill rig off yesterday.
Yeah, they're doing those borings right away.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Supposedly tomorrow. We'll see what the schedule looks like. We'll see if any snow actually falls.
Who's repairing the track? They got one that looks like it's smack in the middle, but maybe it's not in the lanes.
So I've asked them to keep it out. Yeah, so they're not going to be doing any drilling in the lanes.
Yeah,
There was
in that
one
like
that's
end zone area.
yeah. So that'll be fine. And then there's a company like it's like Larry's Clippings or something like
Crowley.
that.
Oh, Crowley.
Crowley.
Oh yeah, dude. I worked with Joe Crowley. He was my landscaper one of my property in Medford years ago.
Really?
And he was like the first person to get into the AstroTurf, sports turf around this area, became certified. And he basically said, he's like, this is this is the future, everyone's going into this. And he kind of gave up his landscape. I think someone else runs the landscaping, Crowley Clippers, and then he takes care of that whole like sports turf management thing. So
yeah.
Joe's a good guy.
Yeah, that's what Fazio said too.
Yeah. Yeah,
So,
he'll do a good job, whatever he's doing.
Yeah, his only complaint was that we paid him a little too slow last time.
Well, that's the complaint of every contractor, isn't it?
He says, you're dealing with government here. It has to go through, it gets to go past 5 desks before the check gets cut.
Mm-hmm.
And then that takes 2 weeks.
Right.
Joe, did you just have another kid? Is there a congratulations?
I did, yeah, my third.
Good for you, buddy.
Congrats, man.
Yeah.
Now you're outnumbered.
No, I got one. So it was a boy this time. So I got one on my side, but we're still outnumbered.
None of them are on your side, Joe. Just
So,
keep on feeding them ice cream. You'll be good.
Bill, I was trying to keep the glass half full, but one day I'm gonna have to just admit that right.
Yeah, your girls are gonna be your best friends when they get older, because they'll just be butting heads with your wife every day, and you come home and you're gonna be a breath of fresh air.
I hope that's the case.
Yeah.
Time will tell, though. That's for sure.
Hey, could you email out? Do you have the latest list? I don't have the latest spreadsheet. The last one I have is from like 2 meetings ago, dated February 28th. I'm going to guess that there's a more recent spreadsheet.
There is. We knocked off a couple of the stuff in the middle of it. Hang on. Like 7,000 things. You guys get a impromptu, unplanned PBC meeting tomorrow now? Because the way the vote went?
It was promptu, if that's a word, depending on the vote. Yeah, we reschedule it. It should be a quick. So I got to go over at 7:30. We have like 4. We have to approve all the engineering quotes basically, so they can continue into like construction documents.
Yeah.
So it should be a fairly quick meeting tomorrow. Then hopefully I'll be back. Joe Bertrand, is he supposed to be on our docket tomorrow, Frank?
Yes,
He's got to do the same thing. So he and I got to leave, and then we can come back on, I guess, right after the PBC.
and we can go quick at the beginning. Joe's usually pretty good.
Yeah, it's just to approve 4 quotes. It's not like a full board meeting. So
Hopefully.
true. I guess all the numbers were already given to MSBA months ago, I guess, so it's not really like, I don't know. Supposedly it's just a formality, but let's see.
Tim, if you tried to call me today, I don't have my phone. My phone hasn't been working for a couple days.
Oh, yeah, no problem. I panicked for a few minutes. I'm like, oh, I don't know. I don't even know where the Zoom link is.
Yeah.
And then I was getting ready to lace up my boots, and then I found it.
Phil, let me know if that comes through.
Yeah.
Me, I'm fine. I'm in my prime.
Prime age.
Prime equal. Tim over here. What's it?
Yeah, I got it. Thanks.
You got a juicer. You'll see maybe like a fly in the morning. About a hot side.
Frank,
Yes,
can I ask for like 5 minutes of the meeting at some point to show some nerdy project that I worked on last weekend when I was stuck at the library for 2 hours? I went back.
sounds awesome. Sounds awesome.
It's exhilarating. You're going to be blown out of your seat with this. I went through and just for well, I can't say, just for giggles, all the capital outlay approval amounts going back to like 94.
Nice.
So I don't
Wow.
know why. I was just curious, and so I did it because again I was at the library, and so if you'd care, I could just show it to you guys at some point tonight, just for purposes. I thought it'd be interesting for our crew to see it.
If you go through the town reports,
Yep, there's some. Believe it or not, and the nerd in me loved it. There's some crazy, like the old town meetings used to have like 50 warrant articles. Like there was some crazy, and this is in the era of the 90s, of the eras of all the subdivisions and like all that stuff. And so my dog's going crazy. You hear my dog going crazy.
As long as Tim doesn't take 2 hours, we should be able to listen to it, Phil.
5 minutes.
Yeah.
5 minutes.
All right, we have at least 5 on, I see. So I'll call the meeting to order at 7:05.
Who's the
And
phone? Who's the phone number?
that might be Jeff. He was just gonna
Yeah,
listen in.
It's Jeff, yep.
Oh,
What's
okay,
up, Jeff?
not a big deal. Dan might be a little late, but he said he was gonna make it, so. All right, without any further ado, we'll go right to Tim. Joe, is it okay? We just go right into Tim, or did you want to do something different?
it's your meeting, so
All right, buddy, no problem. All right, Tim, you take it from the top. You want to just go down your lists?
Yeah.
And, I'm sure we'll have questions.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'll just go from the top. We're starting with district-wide rooftop unit repairs and maintenance, looking for 30,000 there. That's been incredibly common these past 2 years while I've been there. We're spending a lot of our HVAC maintenance budget on repairs for those units that are aging. You'll see lower in my list. I also am asking for a rooftop unit at Woodville. So we could make adjustments to that if we are approving a new rooftop unit, but we are anticipating heavy maintenance costs with those rooftop units. The
Hey,
two-
Tim,
Go ahead.
sorry, can I pull up your request spreadsheet? Is that okay if I pull this up while you're talking?
Absolutely,
Is this
absolutely.
what you're going off of? This is the last one I saw.
Yes, sir.
Okay,
So yeah, we're anticipating to continue to spend a lot of money in that area between Woodville and the Doll Bear School. Anybody have any questions on that one? Or you want me to keep moving? You can wait till.
No, keep moving. If Mike can probably speak to the units and
Yep,
what he thinks it's gonna really, take.
sounds good. Moving down to the Greenwood. Last year, you all had approved $25,000 for an engineering study to look at the feasibility of installing split AC units at the Greenwood. What we sort of found out, and we've talked a little bit about this, is that the only thing we really need to do is upgrade the electrical service, and we would be able to complete that project. So we didn't want to go ahead and spend that money without reviewing this with you all first. It seems like we're able to get that project done a little cheaper than we originally anticipated. So we're, I guess in short, I'm asking you again for the funding to complete that project. It would cost us about, I believe the number was near the $10,000 range to upgrade the electrical service, and then we'd be off to the races to try and complete that air conditioning project. Moving down to the Doyle, we are looking for a rubber playground surface there at the Doyle. It's become more of an issue in recent time, as the Department of Ed does reviews of these play spaces, and based on the population at the Doyle School, there are students there that require ADA accessible playground space. The wood chips, we do have wood chips for a surface there now, but based on feedback from the school, it really just isn't cutting it at this point. So we'd be looking for $100,000 to do that. And to my knowledge, that would get the rear play space as well as the play space that's right next to the main entrance as well. Moving down to Doll Bear. We are asking for $220,000 for a new kindergarten playground and rubber surface. This is one that Dennis has looked at. That's been measured out, and I believe he has requested a quote from Emmy O'Brien on this one. This kindergarten playground is original to that building when it was rebuilt, and is definitely in need of replacement. We've had a lot of injuries on that particular play structure in recent time. A lot of that equipment's just outdated, and so it's looks like that would be the next one in the queue on playground structures. Sorry, one second. Moving down to tier 2 at the Woodville, we're looking for $210,000 for a rooftop AC unit there. That was something that we were looking for last year as well. I put it in tier 2 because it is currently functioning. I don't see it as emergent. It's something that it's requiring a lot of funding to keep maintained and functioning, but it does work. So that is something, and I'm sure Michael could go into better detail on the why on that. Next is on district-wide, looking for $100,000 for a facilities assessment. And this is something, we bring a third party in to assess all the facilities in the district, and give us, there's been a lot of criticism in recent time, that came along with the high school vote, as to how things have been maintained over years. So what I'd like to do is to switch from maybe a more reactive program to a more proactive program. And so look at, have a third party and neutral party say, these are the things that you should be focusing on in the, in the coming days. Just it would, solidify things for us and give us a kind of a roadmap of where we should be focusing our, time, effort, and energy. And then
Could you-
down,
I apologize for
Sure.
interrupting. Could you talk a little bit more about that? Having a vendor come in to do an assessment would clearly be able to give you a report of some kind, but then how do you propose to kind of transition the thinking to being proactive, as you indicated?
so as we go through the buildings, what I'm really looking for is a kind of a different set of eyes than my own, I guess. As to where our priorities should be. Is there, instead of, they could look at and say, hey, these rooftop units are 20 years old. This is something that you should be putting on, you should have on your capital plan, just to make sure that I'm not missing the boat on things that need to be maintained or replaced. And we end up in a situation where a building's not being maintained necessarily as it should be. If my focus is in the wrong direction, that sort of thing. So I just want to, like I said, get a neutral party to look and see, and I felt like it was a good way forward with folks who say, what have we done to maintain these buildings before we're replacing a building like the high school? Have we done what needs to be done to make sure we're getting the most out of these buildings? I don't know if that answers your question, David.
Oh, that's helpful. Thank you.
No problem.
Tim, it's Phil. Do you have a list of what facilities, and is this like a capital needs assessment where it's going to be looking out 20 years? Is it just a current condition survey? And
Yeah,
what
I think-
buildings specifically and under your belt does this $100,000 cover?
Sure. So the buildings really that I'd be focusing on, naturally, the high school at this point would sort of be out of that picture, right? Because we're going to replace that. But even starting with Galvin, I think it's important for us to start looking at what things are going to need to be maintained and replaced in the coming years to make sure that we get the most out of that new building. New as it is, there are things that are starting to go. Some recessed lighting issues we've had in recent time. Some handicap door openers have gone bad. So I think the idea would be to, where should we be focusing on? What are common, shortcomings in buildings of this age? And like you said, be able to prioritize and know what we're going to put on that capital plan year after year. So really, I'd like to look at every building in the district with the exception of the high school. Would be my focus.
And what's the company that's doing the assessment?
We have not gone out to, I don't have anybody specific at this point, Tracy.
Okay, just curious.
I'd like to know what the long-term plan for the Greenwood is.
Sure, that's a good question. Naturally after the high school, that is the next focus. I don't think it's ever, and we really haven't discussed this in detail. But I don't think anyone's ever going to want to take that building down. So I think for now, in the short term, we're focusing on doing the best we can to make the experience at Greenwood as fair and equitable as that can be, like with the air conditioning project. I think we're just making sure that students there have the same, similar experiences to their peers across town, and just kind of bringing the electrical service up to speed, and by adding air conditioning, those sort of things, we're kind of bringing it into the 20th century anyway.
Well, during the debate on the high school, many people pointed out that building was old, 60 years old and obsolete. The Greenwood's way older than the high school. Shouldn't we apply that same kind of criteria? what's gonna happen? Are we gonna consolidate? Are people gonna start talking about a new Greenwood school somewhere? I need a clearer picture of if we're gonna invest in, capital assets for the Greenwood. I want to know if there's some thinking, general or specific on what's the future of that school.
Sure. No, those are great questions, Frank. I think the different situation at Greenwood is that Greenwood has a relatively brand new roof. That was an MSBA project back in 2019, if I'm not mistaken. That building, it's a much older building, but it's a really solid structure. I think a little bit, it's a much smaller building than the high school, and I think a little bit more has been done over the past, close to 100 years of its existence. We don't have the issues there that we did at the high school. It has new heat, the relatively new boilers. So I don't think we're looking at a similar picture to the high school. I don't think anyone would ever want to downsize or relocate the Greenwood or demolish that to rebuild a whole new building. I think that if we are smart about it and do the right kind of projects at Greenwood, that building stands and functions as it is, and we chip off smaller projects one by one to keep that building rolling. If you I'm not sure how much, if you spent much time over at Greenwood, but it's still a pretty functional building at this point. You don't go in there and see the same woes that we did at the high school.
And what about the ADA compliance?
Sure. So those would be some of the focus, right? So there's no elevators at Greenwood. So that's something that would need to be added in the future in a possible renovation there. But I don't think we're looking at the same scale as we are with the high school, if that makes sense.
Oh.
And then moving down to tier 3, the last one I've got, we're looking for 100,000 to do a rubber surface at the rear playground at Dahlberg. So it being tier 3, this is something that naturally we don't see as much of a priority right now, but it's something we want to put on the radar for you all moving forward.
Tim, it's Phil. Greenwood, is Greenwood an historical building that the addition of like exterior features like heat pumps would have to get some sort of approval from the historical commission?
I don't believe so, but I can't give you a concrete answer on that, Phil. I'd have to gather some more information and get back to you.
Just because I know it's a very, it's an 1890 something, 1887. It's an old building.
Yeah.
So that's a question. The Woodville, on our master list, Woodville shows up twice, a rooftop AC at 210, which you show here. But then below that, it's showing an RTU at 100,000. So we had a question at the last meeting and whether or not those are supposed to be, if those were the same thing, which price was right. So do you know, like, is one of the, or both of those are on our master list, but I only see one here. Do you know the story of that?
I would have to ask Mr. Roberto about if there's a disconnect there, if we're asking for two separate things.
Yeah, two different prices. Just, it would be great to know that so we could, easily just delete one line item, from
Right.
our master list, if that's the case. And the fact that you have the 210 on here and not the 100, I guess maybe it's the 100, but that would be great to get confirmation on that. My
Absolutely.
last question is general district wide, like if you get a feasibility study and they give you, laundry lists of things to, their useful lives are coming up, year 1, year 2, these things are coming up in the next 5-10 years. What systems does the town have in place for all that information to be plugged in So these reports aren't read and then, you know, just easily forgotten, and not forgotten on purpose, but forgotten because everyone's busy running in 1,000 directions. So like a BMS system, what does the district have and has in terms of keeping track and managing all this data for all the facilities?
Sure. So we do not currently have a system like that in place. That is definitely a goal of a place we need to get to. You know, and as I've sort of navigated my first year and a half in this position, I'm doing my best to sort of go through all the information. You know, there are reports that that we have from the past that I'm trying to work through and make note of, and work with Doug and others to make sure that that I'm doing the right thing, and make sure I'm prioritizing the right things. So we would definitely have to work on putting a system in place to be able to track that data. And I would, you know, I would probably be looking to folks with similar experience to yours, Phil, to lead me in the right direction. I'm certainly don't. I'm not, you know, delusional in that I think that I know everything that I need to know moving forward. So I'm certainly going to be relying on other folks in the industry and for feedback and advice. Chris Pierce, I'm always calling Chris Pierce for
Yeah,
his knowledge.
wealth of knowledge. Chris says, I'm Joe Conway. I don't know. Do you have a system the town uses that the school could use, or what do you do? What kind of BMM system does the town have, if any, to track all the facilities in the you know?
So right now we use something, it used to be called Dude Solution. It's Rightly. I think they just got bought out by somebody.
Yeah. So I actually, so for work orders, I interact with the town guys through that product. So I'm able
Philip,
to,
when the asset gets updated, it would get put into that. Then we could scan, we could take the tags off of it. It'll fire out PMs and different things like that based on time in different intervals straight from one of the things when we put that into place, like they went through and audited everything we included in it, and then took the PM schedules directly from a carrier or train, you know, whoever we had up there at the time, and built that into it. So as something new comes on, that gets added in just like that. And then just while we're talking about it, so really quickly, like we thought the last meeting, the verbiage on the Woodville School, the rooftop versus RTU, essentially saying the same thing there. So we only need one. There's a chiller on that roof, and then there's a rooftop air conditioning RTU unit.
So there are two different things in that roof.
There
Or
are two there.
the wording, I know you're saying that's typed in.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So what ended up happening was our group here, and I have Chris and Mike actually with me. They're in my office. You can't see them, just off to the side, knowing that we'd be talking about this stuff.
Thank God.
So they yeah, luckily I don't have a wide angle lens, but that was something Tim had on there. And then one of the things on here that Mike has been including and will start to keep including as the years go on. That unit up there, not the chiller, the other one, is an R22 unit. Also, when we get down and talk about the Dull School, so the 60-ton and the 80-ton up there, they're also R22 units. So knowing that the Freon for that is super expensive, and their useful life is getting up there. I mean, they're original to the building when I started it. Yes. So those, Mike actually started all those units up on the Woodville when they built that school in 2000. So those are something that, you know, over time we should definitely start chipping away at. Especially if we catch a leak, we're talking thousands of dollars to fill that right up.
Well, one jug, 30 pounds of R22, $1,600.
And so I don't know if you heard that, but 30 pounds of the refrigerant for that is $1,600. Those paid how many pounds out there?
150.
So if you have a leak of the complete system, you're looking at 150-pound replacement. So
Yeah. Okay. you know, as a member of capital planning, I would love to entertain at some future meeting next year, if the town were to look into it, some sort of BMS, some system, I think, to track this stuff. I think per Tim's comment is right on, like a lot of the things we heard during the high school meetings was people worried about the maintenance of the, you know, the long-term maintenance and all that. And I just think, I think for the town, it would be a huge value add and critical tool to do just that. And it would help. I think eventually once you learn it, and I know technology kind of, it can be cumbersome at best some days, but in the long run, it can be very helpful when you have so many assets you got to look over. So I think it's something the town should really look into for maybe a future ask. I don't know how much these systems cost. I have no idea on your scale. I have no idea, but I think it'd be something worth looking into. I don't have any other questions on my end.
A question from Mike Roberto, if between the two units at the Woodville and the Greenwood, so there's 4 altogether, 4 asks, what one is most urgent that we definitely need to put on this plan?
Frank, do you mean the Dolbear School?
Yeah, what I say,
Yeah, I knew what you,
Yeah, we know.
I got
the
you.
Woodville or the Dahlbeer? Yes, the 60 ton, the 80 ton at the Dahlbeer, or the chiller replacement or the rooftop AC at the Woodville.
Okay, the 60 ton is for the doll beer, is for the cafeteria. I've been having problems last summer with that one. That's probably the priority out of the 3. But my priority about all the ACs is the chiller at the Woodville,
Okay,
That's on its last legs.
So what happens if that chiller goes down?
If the chiller goes down at the Woodville, they have no AC except for the hallway.
so we can replace the chiller and not the rooftop AC and at least get another year out of that rooftop AC on the Woodville?
I can keep them all going. But the one priority for the rooftops would be that cap. If anything, the compressor will go. That's a big semi-hermetic compressor. I don't even know if they make them anymore. But it also got a couple 100 pounds of R22 in it. But I can keep, the priority would be the Woodville chiller and then the cafeteria Dahlbeer and rooftop.
And Joe, those the 2 different size units, obviously, the 60 ton and the 80 ton at the Dahlbeer. Are
Yes.
those both the same price or are those just budget numbers?
That's a budgetary quote from them. We were actually on the phone with them this morning and asked them to give us something hard. I do know for the chiller replacement, that price is rock solid.
Okay. I'm saying if we did the 60 ton unit, is it possible that it's only 100,000, not 130? Or does it go the other way? Is the 80 ton more money?
That would be insulated.
That's what I was asking.
I don't know that off the top of my head. Hopefully I'll have that information first thing in the morning for you. That was one of the things that we echoed to them on the phone this morning when we were up there.
Okay.
Is there any cost savings to do more than one HVAC unit? I think that was a question. If we do, you know, not just 1, 2, even though they're different schools, is there any savings in any way?
Just, I don't want to speak for the contractor, but just looking at it, I would think, you know, mobilization and crane rental and things like that, if you were to do the Dolbear School, let's say, just because there's 2 there, at the same time, you probably catch a savings there because you're only mobilizing once. They're getting wired once. The picks are 1 day. Will you pick up an economy of scope or scale that reflects on the price? Maybe. We certainly love going back to these vendors and trying to needle them and work them down, saying, well, you know, if I'm at X for 2, if I'm at X for 1, I should be at about, you know, X minus a little bit if I'm going to jump 2, right? See where we land. You did that number, Darryl?
Yes, you know. We're seeing more. That means I gotta go through short now. I think go today.
Greenwood School, sorry, I have another question. The Greenwood School, my understanding is we approved a feasibility study. We didn't get, there wasn't a feasibility study done, but you brought in a trusted contractor who looked at the job and gave you, or maybe a contractors, and someone gave you an indication that it could be done. Is there a general outline or plan? And is this number based on that conversation, like a quote of some sort, assuming the electrical has been upgraded? Or I'm just lost a little bit on that project and like what happened to the feasibility and exactly what the project would look like. And then we talked about the brand new roof and the warranty and, you know, all that stuff. But outside of all that, what would the plan look like? Where would the pumps be? How are you going to get through the mass masonry walls? Like there's a lot of classrooms, like, so is there a quote? Like, so where's all that information for that ask?
I have all that here. I can give that to you. So at least 4 vendors were out there. A lot of the big companies that we've done tons of different roof work over the last 3 years with related to that have come out. Once we started talking to them, all but one said that they could do it. Most of it is going to involve a roof penetration. And then there's really no way around hanging some of it from the outside of the building. So I have the historic site register open in front of me. I'm looking for the Greenwood. So that'll be a component to it too. So it'll be a combination of things. It'll be rooftop unit that comes in for the upper classrooms. And then there'll be some outside wall work that needs to get done. And you're looking at a total of 20 classrooms to be done with that.
So this isn't for teachers' rooms, all the little nursing, you know, there's a lot of like you know, the school is so old, there's little nooks and crannies everywhere. This is generally to cool down the classrooms in the building.
That's correct.
Right. Yeah, everybody that came up and looked at it basically said for the common space of the hallway, to get in and do that would be so disruptive that they wouldn't recommend it. Outside of some sort of a project like maybe the addition or, renovation that the Walton had, if you were expanding that back wall and opening things up and doing, for lack of a good term, open heart surgery on the building, that would be the time to fit that in. But as is, it would be too intrusive for anybody to really want to take it on at a price that's going to be worth the town even considering.
And just for clarification, that the $100,000 also includes the electrical upgrade for the Greenwood School?
No, that number is, we're looking at about $240,000 for that project.
Oh, it's right up above it. I see it, the $50,000 for the upgrade. I see it. What was the total, Joe?
Oh, 240.
Oh, I must have an old list.
240,000.
Yes.
No. Yeah, I think, well, you know why? Because the school list said has 100,000 on it.
Yeah, that's my fault. I carried that over from my list from last year. That's my fault.
Yeah, Phil, that number was actually, when we first brought this up, that was the number that we got from one of our vendors that they threw at it for a budgetary scope. And then, like everything else,
That was based
pricing and everything exploded,
that was
labor is
based
a
on 10
nightmare.
units too. Yeah. that was
Oh,
on 10,
okay.
Based on 10 units.
Yeah, so that first one was based on 10 units. This 20 pieces of classrooms basically.
On a physical asset, like does the DPW, does the DPW think, and to Tim, same question to you, do you think this is a good idea for the building? Like outside of the comfort factor of having, because this school hasn't had air conditioning in 100-something years. So I'm asking this just like in terms of like opening up all these different things and attaching things to this old building. Is this a good idea?
From an aesthetics standpoint, I don't think there's any way to accomplish it without a hodgepodge, of units to make the space work, because wasn't designed for it. Tracy brought up a good question last time that we've been looking into, do we have, not knowing what the long-term plan of the building is, do we have an option, with like a 48,000 BTU window unit maybe? And what would that look like? Would it accomplish the same goal? So we've been talking about that, but, Tim brings up a good point, from an equity standpoint and things like that across the system. I can totally sympathize with why the request is there. In a perfect world, I guess on our end, it would be part of a larger project. Then you'd be able to get some ductwork in and actually plumb it correctly. It'd be incorporated into the building, not on an add-on. I know that's not a great answer.
That's a
to your
good
question.
answer.
I
It's a
wish it
tough
could be-
question. It's a tough question. I didn't mean to put you, I wanted to hear your thoughts. I appreciate your thoughts.
Believe me, if we're looking for it to either be black or white, but given what it is, I feel like there's some component of gray no matter what way you go with it. Unfortunately.
It just seems too risky to start putting holes in walls that are from the 1800s. You know what I mean? If you're going to put if you put a split in each room, it's just I don't know, it just doesn't seem stable enough to install.
Can I indulge in a hypothetical? Say that the district consolidates its elementary schools in some way. What is that building is an asset in that it can be converted to housing. And we're doing all this work. How does that affect the attractiveness and the value of that building? Since we're going in and, carving it up for our present purposes, what would that do to the value of that building? I mean, we've done other schools here in Wakefield. I think the Lincoln, the Montvale, I think they were turned over to housing. I just would like to know, what does that do to the value? Is some developer not going to want it because it's, pretty much, become a piece of Swiss cheese?
Yeah, I mean, I can tell you, Frank, like right now with the administration as it is, I know that Doug Lyons sees this building as certainly an asset and something that has not been discussed, that would be anything that's on our radar at all. There is no plan.
Well, I'd like to go on the record. I do think it's an asset at some, if
Yeah,
it's no longer a school. And it
Yeah.
would be a sin to tear that building down. It's a beautiful building.
Agreed. Yeah, I think, between us at the school and the DPW, Chris Pierce, there's been a lot of things in recent time that have been done to make that building more functional. Just in the past 2 years that I've been there, we've invested money in reconditioning the fire escapes. That was a project just done a couple months ago. We had some wrought iron railings installed in the front of the building. We've done we've replaced the steel grates, drain grates around the whole envelope of the building. So, there's a lot going into it to keep that school alive and well. And the plan is to keep it that way for certain.
Can I ask, maybe this is a Chris question, but even if we don't go with the split AC units, is that building going to need an electrical upgrade anyways? Should we just do the electrical upgrade?
Yeah, it's gonna need an upgrade no matter what.
I'm sorry, say that again.
It's gonna need an upgrade no matter what, because right now they're running other things in there. And it's
Okay.
pulling power on that power.
Well, maybe we go forward with an upgrade this year since it needs it anyways. And take a little chunk out of that big nut, and then we can always readdress it again in the future. Since if it is gonna need the electrical either way. And I'm just throwing that out there as an option.
We'd appreciate any, either option, certainly. Step in the right direction.
Tracy, you mentioned like those portable units, right? Like you've seen those in houses and in the other spaces, I'm sure, like, is that,
In old buildings, they work because you don't know what you're gonna get when you cut a hole in a brick 1800s building.
right, so you buy
Unless you're
20,
gonna gut the place like they did to the old schools, so then you know what you're gonna get, but you don't have no idea. So I don't know why it seems risky, that's all. So those units, if you buy in for 20 classrooms, if you're buying 20 of them, you can get them for $500 a piece. Or really, you could even get, and you would think that you'd get a discount from the company if you're buying 20 of them. I don't know. It was easy setup. All I need is a window and electricity. So we may need the upgrade to run 20 of them, but
Yeah, certainly.
maybe the upgrade's the answer,
could that option be looked at and presented back to us with the cost if it's feasible, like with an electrical upgrade as a alternative ask maybe for review? Is that possible, or is that just I don't know how loud, I've never seen them in action. I've seen them, but I don't know how loud they are or whatever, but like.
They're very quiet, especially the Hoover ones.
So Phil, we're actually trying to get that for tonight. The only question we have left is the electrical piece. We have to go in and make sure that depending on what they need to be wired to, whether it's 220, they're
240,
probably
220.
220 something. That's the only thing we don't know. We know that they do make, they're a little bit more expensive than what Tracy was saying, but you could get a 2.5 ton. It would be a little bit of window work involved. We probably have to frame something out so it could sit, but we could. So this group, we meet again. There's another meeting tomorrow, and then Frank, correct me if I'm wrong. Is there anything after the fact already scheduled?
What's that? What, after tomorrow?
Yeah, does the committee have anything scheduled out after tomorrow?
No, we can schedule for something for next week. It's just that there's gonna be, I forget who's out away next week, but we could always do something next week.
Okay.
Who is it? Is
Is
it,
it Dan,
Go
or
ahead.
Jeff? Who's away? Someone's away. Yeah.
I think it's Dan or Jeff.
And
I'm away too, in case you needed me, I'm away next week.
We're here. We got nothing going on.
Yeah.
It was me. I'm away next week, Jeff.
Okay,
Not too much of a, I won't have the electrical number because our electrician is having fits with us based on the size and scope of some of the green community stuff we have been working on. But
okay,
certainly for next week, we could dial that in and tell you, at least give you a comparison, see if we can dump that range down a little bit to be more palatable for sure.
okay. Yeah, even if we don't get the units in, if it's if you get it down to $30,000-$40,000 for an electrical upgrade, it sounds like that would be fantastic going forward. And then who knows where you get the money for the units for the rooms. You could, if they are only $500 a piece,
Well, that gives you options by doing that.
So you could, I'm pretty confident the electrical service upgrade is gonna come in, no more than what you just stated.
Okay,
But what we'll do is we'll put something together and show you all of it. So
okay,
here's an appropriate sized window unit, in the 2.5 ton range. Here's just an assumption on what firm the windows up, will probably be, so they sit right. I don't know, they have boxes, the
Yeah.
bigger ones that they sit in.
Yeah, they're sliding.
Yeah.
What
So
should
the-
happen is they should mock up one classroom and see what it's gonna take to do the classroom,
Because with the portable,
and if it works
you still.
with
have
the
to
amount
look
of
at the
AC.
Well, what's the square footage of one of the classrooms or average?
What's that?
Square footage.
It was 800.
It's 950 square feet.
950. She need,
Wow, really?
Basic rule of thumb is every 400 square feet, 1 ton of AC,
Hmm.
and that's in a new building.
And you have
They've got
12,
big heat load
12 foot ceiling?
and a bigger heat load with those windows.
Huge
Well, I
windows,
think
tall
you need at least
ceilings,
200
right?
tons.
Yeah, the ceiling height is high.
Yeah, big windows. Yeah, typical old.
And with the portables, see the portables, you need an exhaust anyways. So you're gonna have to fix something coming out of the window. And also the portables, you have condensate water. You'd have to drain that out. With the window units, we can just drain it right down on a little line down the thing. But I heard that the new window units are kind of quiet, so I don't know if that's.
Yeah, there's some Friedrich, there's some commercial ones that are so whisper cool. They're not like the old wood grain Sears brand, V8s that we all grew up with. There are some crazy quiet technology out there.
Mhm. And then in the basement of the building, a couple of the classrooms down there don't have windows, so you probably just split
Oh,
those.
they got windows. We look, I don't think they need it downstairs.
yeah, interesting.
That'd be pretty cool.
So Joe, maybe even if we got a number, even if it's a little high for the electrical upgrade, you could use the excess to purchase some units or
We'll
to,
do the, we'll do
to
the
do
whole
some
thing.
test units.
So I'll break it out into 3 pieces. Electrical, acquiring the units themselves.
Okay,
But that'll be for the 20 spaces that we were talking about before.
yeah,
And then, we'll go measure up and we'll take. For right now, we'll make an assumption on, like light carpentry and trim work. And what we think that range might be, and show you all of it, so it could be as holistic as possible. At least to capture the electrical work and then buying the units themselves. I mean, we're a little short on trim. We need to figure out between Tim and our side how to make the rest of that happen with some paint and whatnot. Probably wouldn't be the end of the world if we were able to accomplish something that cools that down.
okay. Anyone else have any questions for Mike or on the AC units? Or for any of the buildings? And then Joe, what do we got for building? I'm sorry, Tim, I was jumping over to DPW.
Yeah,
Anyone get any questions for Tim still while Tim's still with us? For the schools?
There's other stuff on our master list that wasn't on that, summary sheet. So just wondering if like the Yule School has a couple, I think a boiler and abatement. Like, do we need, like, are those not even tier 3? Like, is that what we assume by those? Or I don't know if there's any general comments about the other stuff on our master list that wasn't
Yeah.
touched upon.
I just, I'm not I'm not involved in that building, so I couldn't speak to the Yule, that's all.
So Phil, that was another one that came from our side. Um,
Oh, okay.
that building is still occupied by a tenant. That building, along with the Greenwood, there needs to be a town level discussion on, what is the future plan of that? What's gonna happen there? That's why all those items for the Yule are essentially deleted, because we don't know what the long-term plan is. The boilers are working for now. They're oil fed. It's more there for like a transparency piece. If they decided one day, for whatever reason, that was gonna be, municipal offices and we were gonna convert the building into a new town hall or something. At least then, we can come back and say, we've had this identified. It's always been tabled because that discussion hasn't happened. But now there's a plan and in a future that looks like it's in place. We're gonna bring these back and do this. But for now, outside of, things that we need to do as responsible landlords, we wouldn't recommend any of that. The first thing we'd probably do, if they said that was gonna be used, municipally, is the boiler, and then we probably wanna do the univent work. We basically get everything else in town related to univents, in really good shape. And those could be two, but, at the sake of disrupting the tenant, it becomes a little bit more pieced out. We'd like to get in there holistically, but. So it's really just in there as kind of a transparent request of what the future might look like.
Okay.
All right, if nobody's got anything else for Tim, I mean, we're pretty on top of what they want for the request and obviously the cost of them.
I appreciate your answers.
Of course,
Your
I-
help.
yeah,
And
absolutely. I appreciate all your time.
All right, thanks, buddy. Thanks for coming in.
My pleasure.
Tim.
Good to see you
All right,
all.
we'll see you soon. Take
Thanks,
care.
Tim.
Take care.
Hey, this one's for Mike while I'm thinking about it. I just noticed the senior center, the 2 air handlers, are those urgent items?
I don't think so. We had a problem last year where we had leaks coming from the unit. I wasn't sure if it was actually, they are starting to rot out and they're up in the attic. And, but they're not that old. Those actually have the 410A Freon in them. But eventually they're starting to rot out.
When you say rot out, we're talking drip pans, we're talking. like-
Yeah, you know how they lay horizontal?
Yeah.
Their pan.
Yeah.
We have an emergency pan under them. So that should catch everything, but. It's only happened once, so I'd like to see it happen again, but it's not, to me, it would be my priority. Eventually, they're all gonna have to be replaced up there.
Oh, I know what I wanted to ask too, Mike. So the Dolby has 2 AC units. And so the Woodville only has 1 rooftop unit that does the whole school, or there's only 1 that needs to be replaced?
No, the Woodville has what we call a rooftop unit, and the other is a chiller. There's 1 rooftop at the Woodville that I've already replaced 3 compressors. They have 4 compressors on them. And the damper the damper workings on it, the outside air.
Okay,
Also, I replaced the supply motor. So basically, all the major stuff has been replaced right now, so.
okay,
So my priority would be the doll bear, which it's on its last lick.
okay.
That's all there.
And Joe, you said you got something coming in tomorrow for that 60-ton unit for a reprice, or this week?
But the
Okay.
doll bear, what about the doll bear school versus the chiller unit? It's still the chiller,
Chiller to me is priority out of anything,
yeah, so.
because we only got half that unit running.
So yeah, Frank, I will have that, and then, but that chiller unit, you don't know if you can hear a sidebar in here, but.
Yeah.
Out of any of the HVAC stuff I throughout town, right,
Right.
Throughout the town.
that one is probably the top.
So the chiller over the rooftop AC at Woodville?
Yeah,
Yeah, the chiller, we lose the chiller at the Woodville.
We lost everything.
Yeah, the
Okay, 'cause-
classrooms will go up. There's no windows that are gonna save that place.
so what he's saying, Phil, is the chiller over everything on that list, basically.
Yeah.
Joe, do you have a working copy going?
For that chiller?
No, for the list, for the.
General list.
Yeah. Do you need to see it?
Unless somebody objects, I say, keep the chiller in there, but zero out the rooftop unit at the Woodville. And the.
I'd love
RTU
to keep it on, Frank, for now, in all honesty. I'd
okay.
love to be able to get both projects done if we can mobilize once. I feel that comment, a crane
Okay.
alone can be thousands. It just, or yellow it out, or maybe I would, until we have a bottom line number, I'm hesitant to get rid of it.
Okay.
Same thing with those two, the 60 and 80 ton at the other school. I almost would want to see both just done at the same time rather than just do one and have to do the other one next year and pay twice for a crane.
Can I say something also? The past 10 years, I've been working with the government. And they already made it mandatory to get rid of anything with 22 in it. And the state did too so far. There's gonna be eventually where we can't buy 22. And that should be coming pretty soon.
Would that mean federal money, Joe?
I'm not 100% sure. That's news to me too. If there is, we're going after it though.
It's in your pockets, Frank. Look in your pockets.
Get your
I don't know where
pen out.
you. I'm not saying you can delete it, Frank.
Oh, no, I
At
was
this
just-
point, without a bottom line or question mark, just tag it. I'd love to entertain if we can afford it to do it, but understand if we can't afford it, that there's a priority out of those two, 100%.
Okay,
Bill, we keep on punting, looking in past year requests, like we keep on punting HVACs off because they're so expensive, right? And then eventually it's going to come to bite us. We're going to be in a situation where we're going to have, 5 major rooftop units that need replacement because either the Freon's illegal or the things, we're on our 8th compressor, and so it's better to spread these things out, spread the pain over time, right? Rather than one big slap in the face. But just that's my thinking behind it is all at this point.
So
Would it be worth looking at the possibility of sponsoring a warrant article and just fighting it all at once?
I think I think that's a good idea, but I think this ties back to his request for an assessment. And, kind of thinking about the all the discussions that happened around the high school. There, at least, from my point of view, there's going to be very little appetite for other large school-based projects until the high school is done, and then probably a couple years after that. So having the school system, though the Wakefield school system, have a roadmap. That's the thing that caught my attention when he was talking about it. I don't think, an assessment, like a walkthrough. He kind of described a walkthrough, like, okay, what am I missing here? That's not a capital outlay, but creating a plan, a roadmap, a 10, 15-year roadmap for the school system, barring, the school system facilities, I think is a worthwhile investment. It needs to be actionable, right? It needs to be actionable. It needs to be more than just owned by the school system facilities. It needs to be owned by the school system itself. Not just, he can't just be the champion. It has to be, I don't know, all the way up to the school committee. I'm not familiar with their organization, how they're organized. I probably should be. But we keep on, kind of to your point, Phil, we keep on punting on some of these things, and it's because we're never presented with a plan. It is now easy for us relatively to work with the police department because they've settled on a plan and a 3 cruiser rotation throughout year over year, which makes sense to us. But we don't have anything similar, and the school system is obviously bigger. Something that crosses my mind is, do we fund half of the assessment with the request that it be to develop a roadmap, and then have the schools fund the other half, so that they're putting in, they're putting skin in the game as well as the capital committee. Just a thought on that, because these conversations obviously are really good, but solving for the Greenwood School, solving for all the different compressors. We should have an approach to that, because we're never going to get the town of Wakefield's never going to win the lottery, right? And have, $100 million in capital that, all right, we're going to renew everything. But that's just my thinking on that.
Okay, Joe, can you share a working copy? So obviously, I think a couple of us are looking at old copies. I mean, at this point, do we want to go down, run down that list and get, Joe, if you think we need to get Chris's input on any of these items, especially for the facilities that need to be replaced, the balcony at the Civic Center or the rubber roof on the town hall or something like that. Do we want to get his input on all this info?
Yeah, 1000%. So we have them here. Can you see the one, the spreadsheet with the red line at the top of it? Is that what you can
Yeah.
see? All right.
You zoom in a little, can you zoom in a little bit more?
Yeah, I should be able to. Is that too much?
No.
Perfect.
I'm
Perfect.
blind as a bat, Joe. It's never too much.
Duly noted.
It makes two of us.
All right. You know what I'll do? I'll start with buildings and then I'll come back into fleet afterwards. So starting off, town hall. We're requesting it for 14 more windows. These windows are largely the last phase for a complete upgrade here.
Right, should be
Um,
close to the last phase.
Maybe one or two left over, depending on what we get for a price, at the time we actually order the windows. We also have, the rubber roof at this building, line 31. Interestingly enough, so this building is on the north end, which is over the building inspector and the clerk's office. And this morning, we had leaks going on in the clerk's office and then upstairs. If anybody's familiar with like human resources, retirement, and where the Board of Health used to be.
The elevator, right in the elevator area.
Yeah, right in the elevator, just north, the hallway, excuse me, just north of the elevator. So that wasn't awesome to come into and see this morning. We also identified some rugs up there, that are starting to get pulled apart. There's a technical term for when they're going to get scratched that I'm gonna butcher, but when they start to seam out.
Yeah.
Whatever it is. So these would be up on that second floor as well, by conservation, and in the hallway where the select conference room is. At the public safety building, this is the side of the building that is not being altered by the renovation project. Up in the bunk room, they have carpet.
Yeah. That's carpet up there.
And if you can imagine, a full shift of firefighters in and out all day long, that carpet gets beat on pretty bad. So this request of $7,000 would be to replace that with VCT.
Yeah.
Let's see, 5 Common Street, we did some windows there, we did a new roof there. We rebuilt that spongy basement, entrance last year.
Yep.
And the ramp out back, so this is the request to side the building.
We're gonna have to start pushing off something. Is the siding something that can wait a year?
Siding was on there last year, got pushed. If it has to, we can.
Yeah, I'm just thinking real, we're not, especially if we're gonna think about keeping all the AC units on, and we're gonna have to start knocking somewhere else.
We'll be knocking.
Yeah,
That's for sure.
obviously the roof on the rubber roof of the town hall, that sounds urgent, so I don't think we can knock that off.
Right.
The siding, as long as there's not a hole in the side of the building. I'm just asking your opinion, Chris, not that saying either way.
Well, the siding on the building it's old and does have holes in it.
Yeah.
We've taken down, some awnings, this hole, we've tried to patch them, it's old. I mean, can we go another year? Yeah, probably. If you need to use that to get to your number, yeah,
All right,
but it will go back on next year.
Oh, and that's fine. We could definitely, and then it becomes more urgent.
Right, exactly.
so I'm gonna rip the Band-Aid off there
Okay,
and get going. So also that building, we've done basically every window there with the exception of the dentist office.
Yep, the dentist office replacement there, and then in the basement, the windows in the basement.
So we have a couple to finish there. So that would finish that building. So then we'd have two completely done within the last 3-year period. 11 Lafayette Street. So it's no secret. Our staff here at Public Works is spread out over, I think it's 7 or 8 buildings and 3 or 4 different garages. So Chris's guys have some of their stuff here. Mike's office is in the Civic Center. They have tools and equipment at Midden Street. Their wood shop is in the 2nd floor above our garage. So one of the things they do is they have stuff squirreled everywhere. So they were asking to see if there's a possibility of getting a large shed, probably 16 by 24. As big as Ben will basically allow it, up here at Town Hall next to 11 Lafayette. So the IT
Yeah.
building, just so they have some more formal storage. We talked about 9 Albion Street. That is the cultural building and the roof condition there. That's something that we had on last year.
Yep.
We pulled off. There was some up and down with that. Based on all the roofs in town, this one is, where would you rank this one versus like Town Hall?
It's the worst one of all.
Okay, so you didn't hear that. So this roof is actually the worst one. There's gonna be some discussions on the council level, townwide level of, some work to that building, spruce it up and actually increase. I know like Councilor Dombrowski wants to increase the, amount of use and things like that to get people drawn into the downtown. So this will be the first step, making sure, that we don't have a lovely water feature that everybody's surprised to see when they walk in.
is that a good number, 55,000?
That's a hard number, yeah.
Yep.
So last year we were at 85, and then our roofer this year came in, walked it, bid it, and we got an excellent price for a Firestone roof.
Yep.
So we were extremely pleased with that number there, and the town hall number too, actually, believe it or not. We talked about, Mike talked about the air handlers at the senior center.
Can we zero those out? Anybody have a problem tabling those till next year?
No, we're good.
Can I go back to the Albion Street Center?
Yeah.
Is there any update on what's going to happen I'm expecting, or I'd like to see some accessibility to that building for people who are disabled or elderly.
100%. So there's some grant work that we're going to apply to for that. And then we've also been, I know our engineering department here at Public Works has been engaged with the owner who bought Santander Bank out back to
Right.
see if, what they'll be amenable to a partnership. We do have an access easement through the rear of the building, and it does seem to be the easiest access for somebody that might be mobility challenged there. Anything that comes off the Albion Street side, may include ramping, potential lifts, some other things that may be intrusive to the sidewalk, but then also extremely costly. So they're actively engaged in getting that. I know that's one of the top priorities on that front.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, I don't have anything agreed to or, agreed to in principle, but we're definitely beating the drum on that every day. Especially knowing that there's some interest in the building behind it, and that's subject to change. What exactly that might turn into is still a little bit up in the air, but we're certainly advocating for our interest in that.
Okay.
All right, so moving down the senior center, so the fascia and the soffits on that building, we're doing some work and noticed that they're starting to rot and getting kind of punky. So the request for 35,000 would be to get a lift, and bring somebody in to help us to start replacing that. This should cover all of it on both the front and the back of the building. To
Could-
get some of that out of there before it rots, too bad.
Is that just a rough estimate, or did you get a quote?
No, that's a rough estimate, but is the majority of it is good. There's still that, certain areas that are really bad, so. we
Okay,
feel that
that's what I was
that will
gonna,
cover it.
that's what I was gonna ask. If we threw like 20,000 at it, could you get rid of the bad parts, and then next year maybe we could throw another 20 at it? I'm just asking.
My answer would be yes, if that's the way you need to be.
Is 20, would that get you, is that enough to do
When we get
your,
us started,
yeah,
Should get you half at
Yeah.
minimum.
right?
yeah, I'm just trying to throw some options out there.
No, that's fine.
So, Joe, could you tell me how you built up to the 35,000? I think I heard, not a crane, but a lift. What else builds up that cost?
So you'd have to rent some type of device to lift 2 employees. At the tune of a couple hundred a day. And you're looking at lumber or PVC. It's a historic building. So we might not be able to go with Trex unless we paint it
Right.
ones into the building. It's really time and material. And so, that's the bulk of this. So an estimate of how many days you're gonna be up there, plus the machine rental. And plus your material.
So the time though is only the rental, right?
The time would be the rental, and then we'd have to, something like this, we probably have a carpenter come in and assist us with this. Our staff has done it. We did all the returns and soffit work here at Town Hall. But where this is so high and they're using that building so frequently, we'd probably bring somebody in to do this that could get it done much quicker than we could. It'd probably be a roofer, to be honest with you, that would end up doing this type of work.
Yeah, like I have one of these cornices at one of my buildings in condo buildings with the dentals and everything. It gets pretty extensive. Did you say that 35 was a hard quote? That was just an allowance you guys were giving yourself for it, or is that for spot?
There was a time and materials estimate with a takeoff done by the buildings group here.
Yeah, like this is one project where I'm gonna say if they're gonna get into it, they should just do it all and get it over with, rather than trying to piecemeal old to new to kind of rotted, not kind of nice. Like it gets into a really subjective level of where you stop and where you start. You're almost better off planning to do the whole thing. But so I'd love to see full funding if there's money. Frank, I know we don't have $8 million, but just
So-
my experience with these soffits on these old buildings is that once you get into it, it all needs to get done.
I'm gonna highlight that, and then to remind us to loop back to that.
I'm gonna assume, Phil, and I'm not speaking out of any specific example, that a full software replacement on that building is gonna be over $100,000.
Oh, yeah, no, 100%.
I
Like to
mean,
replace
we're
it.
gonna be
Yeah.
chasing it- We're chasing it anyways. It's a.
Yeah, I know what you're saying.
Throw at it to chase it.
Yeah. So
That's
just
just
doing
my opinion.
sections. Yeah. And
Yeah.
then maybe see this as a phase, like every year, kind of throw some allowances at it to keep going around or something.
Yeah, as long as it's not falling off and hitting people on the head, kind of like that we've done with window replacements at the different
Yeah.
buildings. You throw an allowance, whatever that allowance is, whatever Chris thinks is obviously enough, not to waste a rental or waste people's time getting all ready, and then you only have a week's worth of funding.
Yeah. Maybe after spending like 20 this year, if you came back next year, you could come back with like a more like, yeah, this is what we learned, and maybe this is how many more phases we might need to finish it off or something. So you might learn a lot getting into this too. So, okay.
I'm just throwing
It
that
makes
out there.
sense. Yeah, makes sense.
Okay, the Civic Center, so, like I think I mentioned last time, this is the quote that Dan got, to basically strip, and refinish the entire first floor, including sanding.
Yep.
So sanding of the wood. So the front hallway, once you get up inside the heritage room, and the entire gym floor
Yep, in the bathroom, all those bathrooms.
and the bathrooms.
Yeah, that's an operating expense, by the way. Okay, we need like an operating expense card we can throw up, but refinishing a floor refinishing a floor isn't considered a capital expense.
So if that's the case, do we want to zero that?
Well, whose
Yep.
budget does that comes out of DPW budget, or is that like does the recreation have their own budget for stuff like this?
I can't speak for recreation because I don't know. I don't know what their budget is and what their income level is. It would, to be done soon, it would probably have to be done through recreation, or tabled in, depending on what the year looks like. So if we don't have an awful year, with expenses and things like that, this could be something that we could squeak in, next April, next May, depending on how our expense rate is, but we wouldn't know until we get there. So if they were looking to do it sometime around like October, let's say, where it's not super humid, you get a little bit of break before WBA comes in, we probably have to default to Dan at recreation.
Civic Center has some income component to it. People can rent. I don't know if the WBA has to rent. So like, who gets that money? If someone has to rent, is that go to recreation or to the town?
Recreation manages it, and then I don't believe it is his own enterprise, so I think it goes to the general fund of the town.
I think that money should be used towards the maintenance of this facility. If that would be money maybe to tap into to help offset some of this cost on the town. I don't believe, you can ask if I'm not on during the FinCom part tomorrow, but I'm like 99.9% this is an operating expense and not capital.
All right, we're gonna mark it as such for now then. We also have a brick repoint. So one of the things we noticed, we were up on the roofs and doing some of the work up there that we have been. The brickwork is going to need some attention pretty soon. We don't have any bricks dislodging or anything like that, but the building is starting to get tired in the masonry. So this request came from our group.
This area is where it's missing, the joints are missing.
Yeah, huge amounts of fluorescence along the right rear side of the building. When you're looking at the front, the right rear.
CVS.
Yeah, they're facing the CVS. There's something going on that wall.
Exactly.
So that is in there. We also have, so this is a Juliet porch, I think is what it's called.
Yeah, the porch out front,
So right above the front stairs is like a wrought iron
little porch.
up there, similar to
Is
some of the
that a
stuff.
safety issue?
Is it safety?
Yeah,
issue?
right now it is, yeah. We want to have someone come in similar to the work that we had done over at the Greenwood on the fire escape. Come in, test it, check out all the bolts, make sure it's safe to go out on there. Change anything that's wrong. Give us a certificate. Paint the whole thing up.
Install a Frank Leone honorary chair for the parade every year.
That's where
Frank,
Frank's
you
gonna
get
read the
Frank would get a seat.
Yeah.
Frank's gonna read the approved capital plan from there every time he votes. I
need
just
a
gotta,
top
I
hat.
gotta print it on a scroll.
I need a top hat.
You got it. I'll add that in the bottom. Also on this building, we have solar panels. So I think I mentioned it last time. We were originally proposing an array for both the flat section of the roof and the asphalt section facing due south. We did talk to the historical commission, who wasn't completely in favor of the asphalt portion. So to be honest with you, in regards to this number, I had to ask for the whole thing to be requoted to only include what can't be seen on the asphalt, on the rubber section. I do not have that yet. So we go one or two ways with this. One of the things I was hoping to do for 2 years in a row, we've been very lucky with a combination of things, so an earmark through the state's budget and it's called SRECs, which are basically solar credits that the light department gets and needs to do with some of the compliance things over there. So the two systems that we've had to this point, we've actually paid nothing for. So I was hoping that that could kind of follow suit with this, knowing that this is now going to be much smaller in size. I'd say that the plausibility of that happening becomes greater. Instead of asking for, six-figure influx of cash, we may be looking at 70,000, 60,000. So I think at this point, knowing that, if the committee wanted to see that removed and then maybe reevaluated after we see kind of where we landed a total number, I think we'll be fine with that for the moment. It's up to the group though.
One of the other questions I have though, so what does that reduce your overall square footage to, or like percentage wise? Are you losing 20% or are you losing like 50 to 60%?
So that was something that I need. So the original design, on a kilowatt by kilowatt basis. So we took the annual energy use and then what that system could have put out. It was going to generate 83% of the electricity.
No, I'm sorry, that's not what I'm asking. I'm asking because you're not able to access the rubber roof, what's the percentage reduction of the space that you can place the panels on?
That rubber. No. How big is the rubber roof? 20 by 40?
Yeah, 20 by 40 set.
So say, sorry, do the math.
Rob,
Say 1,000 square feet is what we'd end up with, and then we lose probably triplicate, maybe a little bit more. I don't know the total square footage of the asphalt roof. I don't have the schematic in front of me.
so just, there's kind of diminishing return, right? It's at some point it becomes putting up a solar panel for solar panel's sake, because you're not really going to impact the overall. The idea obviously is to carpet as much of a space with solar panels as possible. So
100%.
I just, when you come back with the, from my point of view, yes, we'd like to see what you come back with, but I'd like you to think about, if you're going from like putting up 10 solar panels to 3 or 4, that's, I don't know what I don't feel like there's going to be a really good cost return on that.
I think that's we're thinking alike there. So if that's the case, I would rely on our chances with the state, because especially if we were to be able to get grant money for it, then its payback is immediate. I think, like you were saying, we went after this to put the biggest impact in that. So that's the third biggest energy consumer in town. So you're right. I mean, I wouldn't, to put 4 panels up there and not get anything out of it. It wouldn't be financially responsible. Then again, if another opportunity is open that's outside of this in the tax base, certainly, we'll take it for sure.
I bet you could rent space on some of the athletic fields. That's a joke.
Just play, it'd be like a bumper pool trying to play soccer.
Right.
You run in between the solar panel arrays. There's a sustainable committee in town, correct? I believe someone was at a meeting while I was away. I don't know but wouldn't they be would they be best, sir, or asked to run the numbers on these kind of projects? So when the capital planning committee is getting it, we're being presented, okay, here's the solar project XYZ, here's the cost, here's the kilowatts, here's the payback. We support this as a green initiative to the town, and then we get it. And the capital planning, our job is to fund or not fund, but to not have the math and like the sort of the championing behind it. I'm not saying on your part, Joe, but more on the energy part, that's a critical part missing in this ask. So even with the small array, I wouldn't support it without knowing sort of like, you know, how many years is it going to take to pay this thing back? You know, and like, is this the best deal in town, or can we spend the same money somewhere else and get a lot more arrays and a better payback? So that's something I would hope that sustainable committee or any sort of committee that's looking for energy efficiencies in town maybe could help with, if that's what their charge is. I'm not quite sure. So
So the way
yeah.
this was originally intended, I have all that. And every one of these that we've done before we put a price to it, that's some of the information we received back. Unfortunately, like if you remember what happened, with the original scope and intent for like the floor away, then the historical commission had some suggestions to alter that. We ended up changing it. So we reached out to them beforehand, showed them, you know, what the potential of the project was. A few members on the commission were actually either in charge of the civic center before the town took it over completely, or intimately involved. They know what some of the energy consumption was like, but ultimately it was the aesthetics of the panels on, you know, the south side of the building that's visible from the street that they weren't in favor of. But all those numbers that you're talking about, Phil, as these things become more prominent, you know, like town halls, another place we'll look at, that'll 100% be presented. This one we got thrown for a little loop because they, you know, weren't completely in favor of, you know, putting something up there that was to the maximum benefit of the town.
Okay.
I could share that with you too if you're interested in seeing what that may have looked like too.
I don't know. I'd like to see it if it's something we're going to entertain, I guess. I don't want to take up any more time on it, but it's just, you know, we're going to spend this much and it's going to get paid back in 10 years or whatever. And, you know, historical commission approves it. Like, I feel like there's a lot of roadblocks already with this project, and we haven't even, like, you know, haven't really dived too far into it.
I agree with you, Phil.
All right, so we'll get into North Ave. So we had a request up there for garage doors. I was able to find an avenue for that money today. So that's been tabled. We talked about the Modine heater, which is basically screwed into the roof of our fleet garage. Between the birds living in it and the thing rusting apart, it's just old, time to go. I think Mike and Jake, Boiler Tech and HVAC are in that thing more frequently than they want to be. And where it is, it's not the best place to be working. We also talked about the automatic transfer switch of that. Mike Curtin, our electrician, did a fantastic job, basically chopping this number down to bare bones. I think, Phil, you weren't here last time, but one of the things I mentioned was now for our building to flip over onto generation, somebody has to manually flip that switch for us.
The number of switches is probably 6 switches that have to be turned.
Oh yeah, no, you need an 18.
In
like,
order.
I would support that. You need an automatic switch. I'm surprised that you've gone this long without it.
You'd be surprised at how many times in the winter too, especially if their phones or something get knocked out and they're running down their blinds. Thank God that it's all powered through the trucks now too. And then the last thing at North Ave, in some of our office space, we have some 9x9s that are starting to become friable. So this would be to get that out of there and replace it with PCT.
Yeah, go back with these. Bulletproof.
Moving along, so we had a roof at Broadway we pulled. Vinton Street is another one. If anybody had anyone in Little League that's familiar with Burnell Field, that has kind of become a unofficial storage place for electrical. There's some traffic signal things in there. A lot of buildings components and infrastructure components for traffic signals that didn't have a home. They still live in the basement of the Franklin School until that was sold. So we're in and out of there quite a bit. Weights and measures will be in there. For now, we're going to table that. Those are things that are nicer to have than necessity at the moment. We'll see what the future comes in with that. And then we talked about, the Yule School, things that we recognize that needs to be addressed at some point in time when we get an idea of what the future plan for that building is gonna be. We talked at length about the Woodville, and I just highlighted it, so really what this is, when Mike was on, he mentioned that this chiller, townwide, to him, in his opinion, is the most important ask out of this full list. I highlighted the rest of it just to tell us to come back to it, but zeroed it out for the sake of, seeing what the total is at the end of the time when we get that. Greenwood School,
Joe, I'm sorry, did I miss it? That jumped up to 230,000 just for the chiller?
yeah, that's a real number on that. Yeah.
That's a real number now? Oh, okay.
The Greenwood, so we're gonna do a little more homework on this for you and present you this a little bit differently. So for now, the electrical service is just zeroed. And then we're still carrying the splits in there, although that, there'll probably be another line added under that, and we'll show what, we think a portable project might look like.
Is there an opportunity with that? And, no disrespect intended to anyone who's both vendor and folks in the town who put time into this, but is there any way to make sure that we get somebody looking at this kind of who can think outside of the box? Like, are there new technologies or new approaches to, I don't know, are there compressors that are stackable so their footprint is less? And I'm literally asking out of ignorance. If that's not a possibility, then so be it. But I just wonder if we're looking at this it's a unique circumstance at this point. Can we bring in some folks who work with unique circumstances?
We certainly can keep doing that. Out of anybody that's been there, we basically had 3 roofs. Through the roof, literally coring holes in the walls and just, littering the outside of the campus with air conditioning, condensers, and then a hybrid approach to that. Now, also, what the portable, semi-permanent, window-based method would look. We could do a little bit more due diligence and see if there's any other technologies that, we might be missing, although.
Yeah, I mean, do we have any, are there any architectural firms that may have, engineers or engineering firms that they work with that do unique work? I'll tell you kind of one of the reasons why I'm just kind of perseverating on this is if we put units in every window of that school, it's going to look a little silly, and I think there's going to be a big reaction from the town on that. So if we have to go that way, which is, it may be, but we want to make sure we've exhausted every single possibility.
Right. Yeah, we had the same initial thoughts too of, drilling holes for the exterior walls, and literally just having condensing units all over the place on the ground too. Because that's a component to it, especially where you can get up close and personal with that.
Hey, so actually, because this is always I've lived on ledge long enough here in Wakefield that I had this pipe dream of like geothermal cooling. Is that a possibility? You drill down and it's 60, it's 50. Well, I think it's somewhere between 50, 55 degrees, and you pump the water through it, and then the pump, and you circulate that up. Is that it's a harebrained idea that I just threw out there. I completely own that.
No, potentially.
That makes sense. Well, that kind of technology isn't very mature right now, I think, right?
Outside of a conceptual level, I'm not completely versed in that. I think one of the, I know it was definitely examined, for the potential of the high school. I think one of the challenges to that might be, trying to find an architect to come in, that would give us feasibility and then develop plan specs and, estimates for the amount of money that we, originally just shot the arrow into the dark room at.
Yeah.
What is the challenge? We weren't successful finding anybody that could give us what we needed for that. To go geothermal, I don't even know. That might be a question to throw out there at the permanent building committee and see if maybe someone from left field or something knows at least what the where are we in the conversation if we're gonna take a look at that.
Right. I mean, so we only need half of a typical, and this is just, again, spitballing. We only need the cooling side of geothermal, right? We don't need the heating. That's already taken care of. So we don't need a compressor to essentially squeeze the heat out of it. But yeah, I mean, if we have some resources on the permanent building committee that may be able to put out feelers, I think that would be interesting. We just keep on kind of spinning on this, and it's something worth spinning on, right? So
There may be a member of this environmental sustainability committee, that has pretty good information on this. She's in the architectural field, so I'll run it by her too.
Yeah, she's been in a couple PBC. I forget her name, but she would probably have some info. I forget her name.
No, a resident in town.
Yeah, we just to let you know, you do need a heat pump with geothermal cooling systems. You still do need equipment to move the cooling around. So you still have an infrastructure issue in the building that you have to deal with. And then to Frank's point, Frank C's point earlier about, the geothermal field, if would have to be studied. When they did it for the high school, they had to study it and test, how big, and the arrays for a building like the high school was gigantic. Like the field was huge, and how many pits you needed. Obviously Greenwood's a lot smaller, but the question would be, would you be putting that in the back playground? And for future use of the property, does that now become an issue where you have your geothermal in an area that might be future development? But
right.
It took a lot of engineering. I think SMMA out of the high school group were the ones that looked into geothermal. They had their own consultant. And then there was a lady from town, I believe, who does that for a living too, that maybe might be able to help give us some initial info.
Cool.
There's also a retention pond that you need for geothermal.
You need a retention. Yeah, there's quite a bit of field space and infrastructure you need for geothermal.
So moving along, the hot water heater at the Galvin, we're pretty sure that we're going to be able to get this through a grant. So we've removed that from the list. We also mentioned the PRV, so I'm going to ask Chris to speak a little bit more to that. But essentially, this is the water intake to the building for potable.
Right, it's for it. You have to reduce the pressure coming from the street to get into the building, because you've had a ton of problems with the sinks upstairs flowing because the pressure is too high. So we have one in place now, but if that was ever to go or we needed to have work done on it, we have to shut the entire building down to do it. So this would act as a second PRV that we could divert the water to and continue the operation of the building while we work on the first.
Yeah, thanks, Greg. My memory being in permit building was as soon as the Galvin opened, there was the pressure issue that was blowing all the sinks apart. Yeah, so there is a PRV. That's why the missing link was whatever happened to that issue. So they did install a PRV at that time.
That's correct. But now we have no way to work on it, or even if it goes, we have no alternative. The building would go down.
So this is a redundancy in order for, for that reason, I guess.
Yes.
So that, just to speak a little bit to the pressure, so that building The services to that building come down the alleyway, underneath the basketball courts, and are tapped out into a 20-inch main in Main Street, which is essentially like the femoral artery of town. So that thing is humming water through it. It sings all day at about 95 PSI. So you're gonna get strong pressure from that all the time. So this thing goes, there'll be some limitations to it, but it'll look a little bit different than, being on the outskirts of town and having something fail at home. And then lastly, just to round out the Galvin, so there's the mention of a loading dock heater. This is something that our group brought up, but I believe we were put on notice about this from the school department. So the rear loading dock, they're storing things out there.
Yeah, well, they take deliveries, they store things, and everything else. It's just that it's so cold, it's blowing sprinkler heads in there.
So essentially, there's like a little breezeway before you get, into the building. With the sprinkler issue, they wondered if they could heat that, at least to keep it warm enough so it doesn't freeze.
They have a heater there now, but the heater isn't enough on the really cold days, that goes down below 32, to keep it warm enough. So that doesn't freeze.
So this is an interior heater at the opening.
That's correct.
This isn't like an infrared heater outside on the loading
No,
dock
no.
for smoke breaks. Though I don't think you can probably smoke in school grounds. So
They
that's what-
walk over to our building for that.
Yeah,
any good loading dock I've ever worked around has always been a good smoke break place. So but
there you go.
it wasn't a school. Okay, so an indoor heater, and that's $6,000. Yeah.
I think is Matt gonna put that one up?
Yep.
So the Doyle School, I think we mentioned last time, they got a grant to do a kitchen there. So inside the building now, they have a commercial kitchen set up, essentially,
Correct.
where they're making a lot for the population of students that's there. One of the things that the grant didn't cover, or,
What wasn't thought of?
maybe they didn't think of at the time. Essentially, when that kitchen is firing, it's pulling all the power out of the building. We have lights stuck to them and things like that. So they need a little bit more power to go there. So we reached out to our electrical contractor and got a price to upgrade that service and get them the juice that they need, and that's represented in that 30,000. Tim had mentioned in his conversation the rooftops for the district-wide, so I'll just pass over that. And then we talked about the BB library. I think Catherine explained last time when she was here, they're starting to have some problems with leaking and things like that. The roof there, at least to her knowledge, if memory serves me correct, is original to the addition that was done. It might even precede that.
Right.
So again, when the roofer was out looking at Town Hall and the Ace building, they walked that with our staff and Dave, the maintenance gentleman for the library. And they gave us another $130,000 to make all the replacements that they requested. FPC, so field, park, cemetery, it's kind of a miscellaneous of your outdoor recreation. Vets Field, so we have a ton of work going on down there related to bathroom. Basically, it's going to take the project that happened in the floor away and extend it all the way out. The town council gave our group of public works direction through ARPA to do some stormwater in there, parking lot rehab, and some other things. While we're in there, one of the things that we didn't cover were new bleachers for that. They're old, they're wooden, they've probably been there since the late 80s. So we figured while we're in there, we put the request in to replace those. So we don't have to go back in after we, turn into the beautiful thing of the days. On the common, I was approached by the Wakefield Center Neighborhood Association. From 50 feet, the bandstand still looks good, but the paint looks faded. When you get up close to it, it needs some attention. Some of the decorative pieces, the lead flashing on the ceiling, not the ceiling, but the roof of it, I guess you could say. Some of the gutter pieces and things like that need to be done. The whole thing, all the posts need to be structurally, what's the name of the stuff? It's essentially wood bondo.
Yeah. like wood bondo.
So it's a structural element that you would coat all the wood and sand it back down. To rehab some of that, it's getting tired. So this $65,000 is for that. I am actually going to say the next time we talk, I think that this request is going to come out. Because we're having conversations and seeing if we can get some funding from an alternative source. So for now, I'd ask if we can leave this and then potentially revisit it the next time we talk. I had a brief conversation late in the day today that I'm going to finish in the morning, and hopefully that number can come out of this. Same deal with the monument across the common from town hall. The same thing, soldiers and sailors. So this is something the historical commission looked at about 10 or 12 years ago. I know Selectman Phyllis Hull, after the World War II memorial, set her eyes on this. Nobody's really done anything with it. And getting involved in scoping out what it's going to take to restore this. Seems like nothing's been done on it since 1973, when it was actually vandalized. One of the guys lost a hand. One of the guns was busted, and they put the fence around it. So this is part of a bigger discussion. So it's out of this plan for right now. It was something that we asked for. The water bubblers that we asked for, it says town-wide. Really, these are for the majority, all for around the lake. If you go by the Hartshorn House and you take a quick look at the one between the Hartshorn House and Bettsfield, you'll see exactly why we have these identified. It's getting replaced. So they're not cheap. This is essentially to buy them and the hardware we need to put them in place, and then our staff would install it. The Doyle School. So Tim had mentioned the playground here. We had talked about the playground here before. One of the things Tim didn't mention tonight is we have a $150,000 grant for this, so that was taken out. Dennis Fazio, our park supervisor, has some quotes for this. He's working with them, the vendor, to accomplish the goals of the school department and get this replaced. So we don't need to fund that through this. The one that Tim mentioned was most important to him, the Dolbear School here. So this is for the rear of the building. I have the rendering for it that we got today. Unfortunately, the price of this thing, not including the demolition and site work, is going to be $240,000 to replace. This is going to be an expensive one.
Didn't you say the Doyle got $150,000 grant?
The Doyle did, yes.
Okay, so why can't we apply the surplus to Dolbear?
Because the price to replace the playground at the Doyle School is $184,000. So it doesn't cover all of it yet.
Okay. So it's not, the Doyle's not 100,000, it's 180.
Yes, yeah.
Okay.
The price of these things is, I feel like we're saying about a lot of stuff. It blew me away when I read it, to be quite frank. But this Dolbear one, and with this, we've had some conversations. The town also got a grant for an ADA accessible swing. So we're thinking about combining the two in there. While we do this, we'll also put that swing back there too.
Hey, Joe, quickly, not to add to the budget, but I mean, I think most of the baseball fields are in pretty good shape. Is there any thought on that Doyle field though? Not the, not the, the better of the two baseball fields, but the second one closer to the front of the school. Yeah, it's in pretty rough shape, in the, the dugouts out. Say it again.
Are you talking about the one closest to Broadway? It's like when you first pull in
Yeah.
on the left? Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah, we have some work going on at some of the fields out there now. We actually we were able to get relatively cheap a piece of equipment for a Bobcat that's going to rehab that. We do have a little bit of drain work there too. That's going to happen as soon as the ground gets dried out a little bit. But that's on the short list of places that definitely needs attention. Given the size of it, it's a perfect one for us to add play to. You know, not necessarily need to laser grade like some of the other stuff we have, but I know in-house, that's something that he's looking at taking care of here.
Yeah,
So,
okay.
Let's see. The other one that's all rest of the playground surfacing. So as Tim mentioned, this is the one adjacent to the soccer field. So this essentially would just be for rubber surfacing that. The only issue I see with that is access from the hardscape to that. If they were to do this, we would probably then have to do some sort of walkway or sidewalk project to accompany that.
Can we zero that out for this year? Obviously, we usually do one a year and looks like we're gonna do two because of the funding to Doyle.
Sure.
And I'm still not sold on the 240,000. So we'll see where our bottom line is for that other Dolby one. That's a bigger nut than I thought we were gonna have to come up with.
Yeah, and this price, like the Doyle, this is assuming that DPW will demo, will strip, will dispose, and prep the site.
Yeah.
Landrigan Field, deadbolt locks. Do you have anything to add into that?
No, it just, it gets broken in a lot, constantly by the kids. You know, so we need to definitely put deadbolts in there.
That's a little small for capital. $6,000 of deadbolt locks.
Yeah, if it was
Yeah,
like
the
brand new
mechanism,
doors and, yeah, if it was like,
door. It's not the slide one, it's the door mechanism. There's a lot of doors up there because you have, all the bathrooms that are up there, you have the kitchen that's up there, you have, the press box, and then you have the old team rooms.
So if we don't have any other things on that, the cemetery we talked about, we pulled. This is gonna be warrant article territory. And last but not least in this section, some historic fencing along the floralway. So I mentioned in between all those granite pillars, there's actually, at one time, there was cedar picket fence in there. When we were doing the work in there, we were asked to fund the replacement for it. The budget didn't allow for it, but we had said to the folks in the historical commission that we would ask to see if that would be a consideration here. So this $115,000 is for that replacement along the floor there.
So we're replacing something that was already there, or
Yes, so it was there.
took it down to put in the field, to put in the clay?
Nope, we were just working in the neighborhood, and they had mentioned that it always existed, and for whatever reason, some period of time ago, probably in the late 80s, early 90s, I would think. Maybe even before that, I never remember it being there. It was taken down, and it was never restored. So they asked if we would sponsor that and see if this group would consider potentially restoring that to that condition that it once was.
But
I
what's
feel like,
the,
oh, sorry, Dave.
no, go ahead.
I was just gonna say that they should request this to be a warrant article and have the town vote on a historic project. I see this as a maintenance nightmare moving forward. This isn't 115 done, you know, this isn't a composite fence, this is wood. Ton of traffic. I see it getting damaged. It's gonna have to be maintained. I almost wonder if they should request this to be a warrant.
Yeah, I mean, if it hasn't been there for 40 years, what's the drive? I mean, what's the use other than?
Well, I think they
There's
just,
there's no safety issue there, right?
No, I would think that it's an aesthetic thing.
Yeah,
well, didn't
really-
they just do some work there?
We did work to the floor away. We did a bunch of drainage improvements, and regrading of that area. There was a tiny bit of fencing, in the area of pickleball. This would essentially be from where that court is working, along the old cemetery back towards, the stone church.
I think it's a great
I agree
historic
with Phil.
project, but like, I feel like the
Yeah.
town should vote on it. If, you know, I feel it's more of a town vote than a cap. With everything else
Yeah.
on this list, yeah.
I agree with Phil.
So do I.
So
I'm
sliding.
gonna tell my wife that people agree with me, and I'm gonna jump up and down and do it.
And it's also recorded and on YouTube if she doesn't believe you.
I'll put it on a loop.
Phil, do you want to make a motion to end the meeting now? And just
Go out on
on a
top.
high note?
I
Yeah.
know.
No, we're gonna end, yeah.
Drop the mic.
All right, miscellaneous, so this is some things that didn't necessarily fit to a building or a vehicle. A floor machine for the Civic Center, I mentioned last time, so really the request for this is everything that we do, sweeping, mopping, you name it, for that big beautiful gym floor on the first floor, we have to do by hand. So if you can imagine, takes quite a bit of time. This would be to fund a machine to do that for us. We had another one in there that we talked about, the public safety building. In buildings, we asked about, see if we can get a new Pro Press for our plumber, a Pro Press copper between 2.5 and 4 inches. Did a little bit of talking in fleet, and I mentioned, so this 20,000-pound lift here was originally our only request, excuse me, one of 2 requests in fleet. The reason why we're requesting is because, right now, as presently laid out, our lift that's in there will not pick up, an F-350. So it limits us, anything we do, just a lot of the vehicles we have, some of the fire department stuff, we can't get up off the ground. So we're requesting this lift to be able to do that, get under them and service them in-house. While we were going through, this whole process, we found out that we have a large drive-on lift, that any of our heavy equipment goes on to get picked and serviced, that failed its safety inspection, and it's essentially been out of service, since. So any of our dump trucks, any of our bigger things, outside of like that F-350 range, we have no way to get that up in the air. So if you have to do anything to it, we really need to get underneath it, and try to do it that way, or we're gonna have to farm it out. So this mobile post lift, would be able to, accommodate what that lift did, and also now, so the way that they work, all the posts move, independent from each other. So it'll give us greater flexibility too, should it, be needed to pick up smaller things too. But really, we needed to just replace what failed its inspection, that is currently sitting on the floor as a paperweight. And then lastly, in the fleet section, so air conditioning machine. So our fleet supervisor noticed, that the price, the police department was paying to recharge air conditioners and cruisers was over $500 a car. It was brought to my attention that, they can get a whole allotment of the Freon for $500, and probably charge, 6-10 cars off of that. So it didn't make any sense to be sending that out, and spending all that money, when it's something that we could accommodate inside. The only thing we need to do is get a new machine to be able to handle that. So what this machine does, it would fill and it also recaptures. So nothing's let out into the atmosphere. Like that.
Question,
So
does the police department have its own maintenance or mechanic or auto tech?
no. So out of the 4 fleet technicians that work for Public Works, we do all their cruisers, and everything like that. The only thing we haven't worked on yet, to my knowledge, we have not seen any maintenance related to the electrical parking vehicle, outside of like tires and things like that, but we handle all that in-house. We have a bay that's essentially, if you come by during the day, it's pretty much dictated to police cruisers and public safety vehicles.
Okay, thank you.
So Tim talked about, his assessment. So I won't go too far into this. This scoreboard at the soccer field was a request we got, similar to what we did a few years ago at Walsh Field. I am reasonably certain, that we are gonna find out that we're gonna get a contribution to this and end up not needing the money here. So depending on the comfort level of the group, I'm comfortable with zeroing this out for now.
Yep.
So the fire department was in, Deputy Chief Purcell talked about the high vis jackets.
So what was I had to miss that. I mean, what was the group's feeling on the high vis jackets and the fact that it's operating equipment for those firefighters as opposed to a capital investment?
They're not replacing existing jackets. It's so they don't have to wear their gear to random calls. And there was a lot of discussion about the carcinogens and that live within their main gear, that this would allow them to have another sort of uniform, so to say, or jacket to wear out on calls, that they don't need their regular firefighting gear. So I agree. It's not, I don't know when it's like not replacing something, if it's brand new and it's
like-
related to their job. Like, I feel like it's really important. Like he sold me that it's needed, and the whole capital question, I guess, is a question mark.
Right. I mean, does it set a precedent now, or is there equivalent of high visibility jackets for the police? And then, I'll draw it out a little absurdly. Joe's folks are out in sometime in twilight, right? And I'm not saying they need those high visibility jackets. I'm not trying to downplay the ask for those, but I'm trying to kind of highlight the precedent that this sets now, where the kind of equipment to do a job that should be a department's responsibility to expand into then has become now has precedent to be a capital expense.
My impression, based on what the fire chief told us, was that it seemed like this was just germane to the fire department, and it is a national issue with some of the equipment they wear. The fireproofing tends to be carcinogenic, or at least that's what a lot of firefighters are contending. So I think that's what sets it apart from the police or the prospective DPW workers. Unless I'm wrong on that, I don't know enough about it, but that's the point that struck me as important. I mean, I hope that answers your question somewhat.
Yeah, it doesn't. I mean, for me, again, I agree that these are very much needed, and that makes sense that you don't want to be wearing jackets that have been exposed to smoke and therefore are continuing your exposure to carcinogens. I absolutely agree with that, and I think it's been a long time coming for kind of figuring that out. But that doesn't, the need for that doesn't, I'm being very impartial here. The need for that doesn't impact my question still. Is this a capital expense? Because this is something that's necessary for these individuals to do their job for the department, for the city, the town.
I thought
Yeah,
it was the material they were made with were cancer-causing agents, specifically that they were fireproof. So that's why it wouldn't be another department, but the National Fire group said that it'd been proven that the material they used was cancer-causing.
Yeah, Tracy's right on this.
Whether or not it's a capital expense versus a department expense, I don't know, but So my point was that, like Frank started to say, is that it's not, it probably wouldn't be other departments that would be looking,
No, that
looking to get the
wasn't my,
jackets too.
I just want to be clear. My point wasn't that every department's gonna want high vis jackets. My point was that there could be a precedent. And so are we going to pay for bulletproof vests for the police department?
Good
That's a
point.
good question.
Yeah, like it's not extending the life of a current asset and buying a new jacket. You know, all the health reasons are 100% concerning and need to be dealt with, you know, and I think a denial of this expense would not negate that need. Just more of the fact that as a capital outlay committee, this doesn't seem to be a capital expense. And you know, FinCom's going to be at the meeting tomorrow night, Frank, like maybe, you know, we don't, you know, maybe we double
Yeah.
check with them on this, because it is, you know, there's no asset. It's not extending the life of any asset because they don't exist now. So any other uniform, I think most uniforms are just tax deductible to the person buying them, right? Like if you have to buy a uniform for work, you can claim an IRS deduction, but it doesn't make it capital. Like we need to, you know, it's a shame they can't come up with this money in their departmental budget, because that's where I think it's going to end up.
I think the other test for capital is the durability of it. And I don't know how an accountant would look at this, but I would think that jackets are a garment, even with their high-tech capacities. Why would they be treated any differently than, say, the rain gear they wear when they fight a fire or anything like that? I don't believe that stuff ever comes before us as a capital expense. So why would this? This is treating a garment differently than other garments, as high-tech as this is.
Joe, can we highlight that? Maybe we'll ask Joe Bertrand. I think we're all on an agreement that it shouldn't be there, but we'll just run it by Joe Bertrand, just so we can tell the fire department we did our due diligence and determine that it should be in the budget. If everyone's okay with that.
Yes.
Yeah, it's a fire department. You want to do something nice for them.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think one of the other things that was talked about last week is that, you know, with this being the initial, you know, slug to buy whatever, you know, 40 jackets or whatever it is, you know, beyond this with, you know, new firefighters coming in or having to replace the jackets, that would go into their operating budget. You know, but they were asking, you know, this big slug to come out of the capital. But I agree. It you know, it's on the fence there.
Yeah.
Okay, so just to round this out, also talked about the Greenwood Fire Station, so I think the turnout gear lockers are pretty self-explanatory. And then last, my group had something in here for ADA improvements. We have a bunch of applications out right now. We're expecting some good news on this. I'm actually going to recommend that this gets zeroed out for the time being.
Haven't we done, we've done ADA the last, at least a couple of the last couple of years, haven't we, Joe? Put money towards that?
Yeah, we did. We needed help on the buildings end, identifying like door pulls and things like that. This was going to be, when we originally thought about it, this is going to be something to start like accelerating, heading to that punch list. But, you know, the grant window, funding opportunity cycle that's up now. We have a lot of stuff that's out and heading out. We think we're going to hit some of that with. So knowing that, you know, the squeeze has started with this, you know, it made sense for us to pull that out because we think we have very competitive applications out there. We basically do ADA every day though.
Yeah.
More or less.
And jump into it because it's still on the screen, the facilities assessment. Tim didn't really have, I mean, that's just a number he's throwing out. Did we even think that that might not even be a capital expense? What are our thoughts on that again?
When I do capital needs assessment studies for my property, like condos have to do reserve studies, which is a 20-year capital outlook for their property, right? And it looks at, it's not an engineering, it looks at everything, it assigns useful life. We are allowed to pay for that out of their reserve capital fund because it's related to maintaining their asset. The CPAs allow us. So I think the study, if that's what it is, if it's just someone coming in and saying, hey, this building needs a, if it's not a extended, like if it's not like a study over time, I worry that it wouldn't be capital. If it's just someone coming in and saying, hey, that window's broke, that carpet's old, I don't consider that capital. So it's tough to not knowing
Yeah.
enough, and he doesn't have a quote of exactly what this is going to do. It's tough for me to say that this is a capital expense, but like if it's a capital needs assessment, then I 100% think it would be helpful as a tool. But I don't know if that's what it is.
So.
Yeah, we don't
just
know what
to
the
put-
report will look like.
Right.
So maybe if we request what we're gonna get out of it. Because it would be very helpful, but that's a lot.
Well, I think what everyone's asking for here is that whatever the report is, it needs to be actionable and have a plan, a going forward plan. It can't just be like literally an assessment. Someone came through for a couple weeks, talked to some people. Yep, that's broke. Great. You've now identified 15 broke things in the schools. That's not actionable, right? There needs
Right,
to
the
be
age of everything at the building and each
Yeah.
building, yeah.
and this isn't broke now, but it'll be broke in 5 years. So you should start planning to, put that on your roadmap kind of thing. And I think that would be awesome, particularly with the cornerstone of a new high school and a somewhat old middle school. Really just gives us the ability to really leverage as a town our school system, because that's pretty important. It's one of the things that drew my wife and I here, other than the fact that she was born and raised here,
Secondary. Yeah.
secondary, right? So could we get Tim, could we give that feedback back to Tim and see if, because even that, I mean, 100 grand is a lot too. That's
Is Chris, Chris, you still here?
He actually just walked out. He had to pick up his daughter, but I can
Joe-
get that from Tim.
Joe, is this something he should be working with Chris on? I mean, Tim,
So
that's a big, I mean, he does a lot. I mean, does he get that deep into the buildings?
yeah,
that-
I mean, so if we knew this was going on, we definitely want a seat at the table during it.
yeah.
Not to complicate this, but I almost wonder if this is what I'm gonna assume that he's looking for, if it makes sense to do it holistically across the board, or at least to explore what that is. So loop in town hall, loop in, the Greenwood Fire Station, loop in.
Oh, I that is, sorry, Joe, I just worry that's boiling the ocean, right?
Probably.
I do agree that, you could break that up and like, okay, the public service areas next year we'll do an assessment on that. And then the year after, or 2 years, then we'll do another, a set of buildings. But I think if you try to get that all in for the town as a whole, that's gonna be, because each one of those areas are gonna be stakeholders that are gonna own their own roadmap, ideally, right? Their own plan. And trying to get one vendor in here, then to make multiple plans, I think just, it gets really confusing really quickly.
And like I said, I don't want to complicate it.
Yeah.
So like, if this was something that my group put out, we do this type of stuff all the time for infrastructure. Our roads decision-making is based off of this type of mindset, water, sewer, all of it, right? So, we basically we create a grading scale. So age, condition, assessment, prohibiting factors related to addressing things. And then the goal is to make sure that we're capturing things laid out in a 15-year plan generally, that we're getting to it before it becomes so cost prohibitive, that we've done ourselves a disservice. So not to speak for him, when he says the roadmap, I think that's what he's looking for. Like, he's looking for expert advice to say, this asset should be depreciated and replace that, whatever the interval of time is. So we want to plan to make sure that we're set up to be able to address that maybe a year too early, then, 2 years too late.
But aren't we pretty much doing that? Don't we already have some of this in place? Well, like
some of it, I think what he's looking for is a more formalized approach for the buildings that,
Well, maybe taking what you're saying, Joe, to the next level. You've got the subject matter expertise in-house. You just need to formalize a relationship with Tim, kind of put together a charter with Tim so he can, so you know that the two of you are gonna collaborate over the next year to kind of mirror what you're doing in the DPW with school facilities.
Yeah, so I think everybody over here, so Tim was one of us, we all worked together. We get it. Part of us wanting to have a seat at this table is to make sure that all of our ideas, wants and needs are thrown out. And then if they came up with a plan, it would be our intent to make sure that we're in line with it. Everything is succinct and there's no guesswork. If that plan comes up and says, here are the 10 things in the priority that we want to do it, that's what we want to roll with. We like to be predictable and be able to plan things out. Every once in a while, you're still going to have your unexpected emergency, things like that. But, to the idea of, working in harmony, we'd be all about that. So that would be something, if he goes forward with something like that, we'd want to make sure that, we'll be involved. We'll put in our input and then trust the guidance of whoever the help is that puts this together, and then it'll take some of the guesswork out for sure moving forward. At least then we know, too. So if we know in 2024 that one of those units that we were talking about earlier is definitely going to be replaced, maybe that's not even a discussion now, because we know what's going to automatically come up next year. We've already decided on that and got comfortable with that plan.
I don't know, I think it seems a little redundant and expensive. Because you guys already have that 15-year plan. We've seen it. It's on all the facilities of each building, including school. I don't know. And he made it a tier 2, which I thought was odd too.
Yeah,
Maybe we ask him, maybe we take it off and just ask him to
Yeah.
revisit and come back with a more formal proposal of what this is. We support the idea, but there's too many, and maybe remove it because it's tier 2 and question marks or something, and see what he comes back with for next year.
Joe, I think what we're hearing from the committee is we actually want to zero it out, but we want to give him feedback and give him the opportunity to work with you. Right, like you had said, so you have the seat at the table, but we need something more concrete.
Having a capital needs assessment, it would be a critical tool for any asset. So like, I support that. I just don't know if that's what this is.
I just included a note on this myself, so I will, probably not by the time we adjourn tonight, but certainly, well, I probably will anyway.
well, Tracy implied that there's some kind of redundancy here. Can we clarify that?
So at the end of this process every year, we update the town's capital plan. For vehicles and things like that, we have pretty set depreciation rates to it. It does get a little bit harder with buildings, just because there's so many more moving parts to them. But generally, so like the two guys that were in here with me tonight, we always sit down and debrief everything, look at the years, ahead, and try to make sure that, really based on age and the condition. At least we have some sort of a roadmap laid out to us. I think if you were gonna do a targeted assessment to that, you'd probably go into much greater detail. Yeah, only because of the nature of the business of what I do, I can tell you where some of the pain points are and some of the machinery and things that we use. From knowing that, but I might not know how long the bearings in a carrier air conditioner are gonna last. Because I don't replace that all the time, so I think that's what this type of thing will more than likely be trying to identify. I would think, but I mean, he'll ask, we'll make a request to clarify that. And then evaluate whatever comes back.
So we zeroing it out and asking them to come back next year? Or are we getting the clarification and then maybe revising the figure one way or the other?
The latter, probably, the latter, probably. Come back and talk to us about what this is.
Oh, I was thinking the former.
I was
I was
the
thinking
former.
next year. I was thinking
Yeah.
come back
Next
next year.
year, yeah.
Huh?
I don't know what the total is. I think we were at like 2.7 last time. We scrolled down a little
We're
bit more.
2.5
So
now, yeah.
Okay. Next year.
So what is the number that was given to us? Are we close to it?
$516,000 away.
You know, I would say we're close to it.
I would
And
say
see
we're
what,
close to-
see what Mr. Mayo says about
I
that.
would say we're close to it.
Does that include your 3%, Phil?
5%, Frank?
Oh, you're up to 5 now?
Oh, 5% is what was, yeah.
Hey, Joe, did we lease one of these at the top, one of your machines?
I'll get into that in a second.
I'm
So
trying
just
to, is this got any
just to go on
leaks?
this- Yeah, so last time we talked, I think the committee made a decision to zero out the IT based on the
Yes.
conversations that were had there. Just quickly while I'm here, nothing's really changed in the enterprises at all. Both water and sewer. Relatively light, relatively redundant from what the year over year looks like. To what you were talking about, Frank, is up here in Fleet. We did show
Yeah.
this larger truck, what the lease would look like. The last time we talked, so this vehicle here, this truck is used by engineering. It's in okay shape. It's starting to get old, especially for what, it does with some of the snow and things like that.
Yeah.
The reason why that one makes sense to pull now is because getting one is gonna be tough. And based on some of the other priorities we have here, it's triaged a little bit lower. I also, since last time, so probably why I asked Chris to tell her to leave. We've talked about aerial lifts a lot. Building troop was looking to get one, so we don't have to rent them every time we're going up high. Phil, I think I have a spelling error here that I'll fix for you the next time that we talk.
Yeah, you gotta fix, you gotta fix water booblers too down below.
I think Dolbear as well.
I'll do my final proofreading for you, Joe, before you publish this for the town.
Not only are you right, you're a fine editor as well. Yeah, the other thing I showed last time, so this sidewalk plow that we have in here, I showed what a lease might look like on that. Admittedly, like what we talked about last year, they're very expensive, but what they do well, they're the best thing on the planet for it. Just a couple of.
Joe, I'm just throwing this out there, obviously. I thought, yeah, we talked about the plow. You had 3 active. And then the trailer, the hot box trailer, that would knock 110,000 with those 2. Are those the hot box trailer, you think that's an urgent item?
So we have one that we lost. It
Oh.
burned up on us. So I can tell you that's something we use all winter long to keep asphalt warm. So we really don't waste any of it.
Yeah.
They'll even use it, during the summertime, so it extends the life of what we're using and really limits the waste. So the one that we have now is probably about 10 years old at this point in time.
Okay.
The burner's burned up on it, and by the time you replace the burner on it and rehab it, you're almost at the price of a new one.
I gotcha.
So that's kind of where we are with that. I dumped the aerial lift from this, the senior transport van. So, our fleet supervisor, they had a good conversation today about that. It seems like, there's a need for them to address, potentially getting, another bus or a bigger van. Unfortunately, the upfit for that is super unpredictable, and we don't know if we put it in order A, will it even be filled, and how long will it take? We could be looking at over a year out for that. So for now, that's zeroed out until some of that supply chain stuff starts to look a little bit better. We hate to tie up, a considerable amount of money and not be able to do anything on it, or God forbid, find out that when we can, we get informed if there's been a price change and how we're insufficient on funding. That basically.
Right, so
sums it
that
up.
still gets us at, we're at 2.5.
You are at
2.5.
2,500.
All right, guys, I know Frank, you ask every week, what's our number? I would like to go into tomorrow night with both Joe and Steve, hopefully present, with that number,
Yeah,
and have them look at our recommendations and see how they feel about us, with all the roof replacements we're doing and the AC units. We get a lot of money in roofs and ACs. Maybe that'll give them a little encouragement to give us a little bit more. Oh, the AC, we didn't even put the door beers in there. I thought the door beers were on those numbers. So we only got the chiller replacement at the Woodville. Wow.
You have that, and then the other air
They split
conditioning.
ACs for
Oh,
that.
the splits for the Greenwood. Oh,
Yeah.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry, folks. I'm not for the split ACs at the Greenwood.
I'm
I
not
wanna-
either.
I want to do the electrical service upgrade. Oh,
Yeah,
I
agree.
forgot that was on. I thought we took that down.
yeah.
How
I think
how do you feel?
I agree with that too.
I agree
Um,
with that.
Joe, I thought you were gonna talk, were you gonna talk to Mike or something about the electrical service upgrade?
I will, so I'm gonna highlight that, and I'm just gonna throw a placeholder in this.
Yeah, put it for
50.
50, and
Yeah.
then
Time being.
I'd zero out the Greenwood ACs. I'm still not on board. Does anybody feel 100% about that?
100% in favor.
Of the 240,000 for Greenwood school ACs?
I do not.
Yeah, I'm against it too. I think,
Geez,
they've dealt with this for all this time. They can do with it a little longer.
And we're talking, what, 3 months? 3 months of the year that they,
Yeah, maximum.
June and
It's-
September. Yeah,
Tough to approve $250,000 without a plan.
Yeah.
Like a plan that I think was gonna look good and make sense in any way. Like if
Mhm.
I think it should be removed.
great.
and
So-
entering into this decision is the fact that all the kind of, hole punching in the walls and so forth, is
Yeah.
that part of our thinking?
If you drive by
Yeah.
the school now and look on the front right side of the building, that right next to the garden, there's a heat pump that they installed a couple years ago for the principal's office, and they bracketed to the brick wall. And when you look at that and if you imagine how many more of those around the building on the roof, it's gonna look rough. Like it's gonna look really bad. Like
Okay,
I just feel an aesthetic point of view. I don't think this is the way. It's an old building. We're limited. I also don't think it's even close to $250,000. I think it's probably going to be a lot more than that when push
Mhm.
comes to shove.
Once
But
you open it, right.
yeah,
I think it should be removed. Oh, it's been
I'm good with that.
Do we want to
does that bring us?
reallocate? Oh, sorry, I was just gonna say, given how people were feeling about the other ACs, do we want to reallocate a portion of what we just took away to either the Woodville or the Dole Bear?
I like I know Mike said the 60-ton unit over the cafeteria at the Doll Bear. And Phil's got a valid point about, crane rental. I don't think it's something they're gonna give you a discount on, though. I'm just speaking, the reason why they'd have to carry the money is because they don't know if something's gonna come up and they have to do it in 2 different mobilizations anyways. So I don't know that unless you get a written contract that says if you do it in one mobilization, you're gonna discount me $10,000. You know where I'm going with that, Joe?
Yeah, I can go back too. So, the last one's $1,200 for the day rings a bell, but we had to lift into the courtyard at the high school. So
Yeah.
I'll go back and see. I can look because it's called out because it's a sub
Yeah.
contract. I could see. I have 2 phone numbers in my phone I can call to see what a crane will kind of run me for a day.
I just spent $5,000 for a day rental on a crane in Brookline.
Ooh,
Yeah, that's in Brookline.
Yeah.
Tell me about it.
yeah. I mean, so the only thing you have going for you here is like we don't need a crawler, we don't need anything massive. 80, 120 feet for the Doll Bear, especially because we can get right up to the building.
Yeah.
Should pick it. So the other thing I can look at too is I have bid items in our tree contracts for crane work of a whole bunch of different sizes, and whether it's hoisted trees or it's hoisted an RTU, somebody that knows what they're doing has to rig it. The only thing they care about is weight. They don't care if they're lifting trees or AC units. So I'll look at that too, just to give a little bit. But
And Joe, I'm sorry, remind me, I know I already asked this question. So the 130 for each of those, we think that it might be a different price for the 60-ton unit, or it could be that the 80-ton unit's going to be more money.
no, I'll have by the time we talk tomorrow. I'll get a complete exact. We were on the phone with them today actually talking about it. So
All right.
I'll dial you right into what that is.
All right, I'm gonna recommend we put the 60-ton RTU unit back in the plan then. At least, again, tomorrow night, that's just gonna probably put us near 2.4. And we'll see what Joe and Steve have to say about it.
I think that's a good approach.
And again, obviously, I can't see the whole list. Do we have 3 roofs on this plan? We have the town hall, we have the 9 Albion, and do we have a third, or was it just 2 roofs?
The
Library.
And the
Library.
library. So there's another selling point for us to go up higher. Is, we're replacing 3 roofs, we're replacing a bunch of AC units that are about to fail. So,
The 3 cruisers have gone up.
yeah, that's always a selling point. Yeah. Yeah, 10 years ago, it was 50,000 each. Now they're,
Right.
or even 30,000 each. I want to say 10 years ago, not, it was 100,000 for 3 cars.
It was 70 now.
So, what's our bottom line here, Joe?
on the tax side right now. 245.
2456.
Yeah,
Oh, that's pretty good. If we make the 785. I'm gonna recommend we go into tomorrow night with this plan. And obviously, it's still a work in progress. Unless somebody has something they want to get out or put back in.
Can you send this out tomorrow morning, just so we can look at it before tomorrow night's meeting?
I'll send it out as soon as we hang up. I'll because I've been doing it live. I'll shoot it right out.
Okay, thank you.
And oh yeah, before we go, Phil, do you want to talk about what you want to talk about, or do you want to table that to another time?
Give me, I'm gonna ask for 2 minutes. I'm just gonna show you something for the sake of showing it to you, and then we have to approve the March 7th minutes. So just last April at last April 11th, town council, Steve made a comment that he, with the prices was going to be recommending an increase of 5% increase per year for our budget. He said that at a town council meeting. Okay. So with that said, 2.1 last year, if we were to increase every year 5%, you can see cumulatively over the next, 3, 6, 7 years, we could easily with built-in increases get close to 3 million. If we start off with like a 5% increase, at least a 5% increase this year over last year, 5% a year, cumulatively, these increases really mean something, right? So I 100% agree with going in with this plan. This is a lot of numbers, but just so you could see, I went back again, I had some time, so don't make fun of me. But you can make fun of me after the fact. Back in '94, capital spending was like $140,000. You can see here, it was a couple years over $1 million. Mostly we were under $1 million until you started getting into about 2011. And then 2015 was the first year that we started to spend about $2 million in capital outlay at town meeting. Okay. And then since then, you can kind of see where that's come in. It hasn't changed much since 2015. I have data because I've been on the committee of how much the original asks were and then how much we actually approved. So like you could see every year how much we're underfunding. 1 year the numbers are totally off because we had remember cut our approvals in half. The year of the pandemic, fiscal year 21. So this kind of shows a huge underfunding. But we never got that million back. And so I think that's telling too, and I don't believe they ever responded to the letter we sent about ARPA, but Frank, you could probably speak best to that. I don't know.
I was about to ask about that. Was there a resolution?
No, they never responded.
Yeah, so like if someone from town council is at the meeting and for some reason I'm not back because I'm a permanent building, I would love for someone to really point that out, that like no one on town council responded to our letter about that. I think it's a valid ask. Especially when looking at the underfunding every year, and the fact that we've been at this 2 million since 2015. I did a bunch of fuzzy math here. I'm not even going to get into, but really the biggest picture here, and this is what I push on the properties I manage, is that budgeting a small increase every year cumulatively starts adding up. And so I really think I'll stop sharing. So I really think it's something we really as a committee should take it upon ourselves. I asked Joe Bertrand, who's on the finance committee, if they're the ones that set the capital planning budget, like where does this 2.1 come from, right? And they don't have any say in that. So I believe it's a number that is sort of made up at town hall, and I don't know how it's made up, and I would love to get an answer. Like there's no strict budget. It's it's a bit of money from every department that sort of makes up this. But I feel if that's the case, it should be easier to absorb an annual increase, at least to our budget. So I really think I support going in with the numbers we show. I'd love for the town to show us ways that they could cut, or if they could find money somewhere else to cut it. But all in all, I wouldn't want to settle for less than 5% what we spent last year. And I think we as a committee should push that and let the town tell us why that's a no.
Awesome, Phil, that's awesome. Can you send that out to all of us if it's not a big deal?
I could send it.
The file?
Yeah.
Maureen's supposed to be on the meeting tomorrow, along with Joe, obviously, and Steve Mayo. So at least
Good.
we have to start to ask the question. So I think that's good. Hopefully all three of them do show up.
Yeah, it'd be great.
Yeah.
Do you want to make a motion to approve the March 7th meeting minutes?
That would be great.
I'll
I
second.
move. Okay. Yep.
Hey,
All right, and what else? What other business did we have? Is that it?
so whenever, we're meeting
Oh,
tomorrow night.
yeah, meet tomorrow night, and then next week. I know. I'm sorry. Is it you away next week, or is it Jeff that's away next week?
I think Jeff is away. I just cannot make it on Thursday.
Oh, okay. All right. Can I recommend that we have a meeting date set for the 21st? And what that's going to be is if Tim needs to come back, or if Joe needs to represent numbers regarding, say, the Greenwood electrical upgrade. So then if we are missing somebody, that doesn't have to be our final voting day, but that can just be, we can get all our updates. Is everybody okay for the 21st at 7 PM?
Good.
Yes.
Yes.
I got my daughter's 4th grade concert that night, believe it or not, at 7 PM.
Oh, at 7? Can people do 6 o'clock? Oh, Phil, can you do 6 o'clock if we bumped it down? Or is that kind of close?
I could do 6. I just gotta leave at 6:45. That's the only thing.
You
It's,
can-
it's
you
only,
can
it's
come
at the
to my-
Greenwood or
Oh,
Galvin.
it's at
so-
Greenwood.
It's at, I'm sorry, it's at the Galvin. Yeah.
Let's say you could come over to my office. I'm across the street and then you can just run over there.
I could do that. I could do that. Yeah.
All right. And does
But
anybody
it's
have
early. Yeah.
an issue with 6 PM on Tuesday, the 21st?
That works.
Good.
That
Fine.
works.
And so Joe, I'll ask you, do you think so what did we ask for? Tim? What did we ask Tim for? Or was it for Mike about the electrical upgrade for the Greenwood?
Clarification on that, a firm and final number on the HVAC, the 60 ton at the Dole Bear.
Yeah.
And then I have written down, costing information on the approach, if we were to go window unit at the, Greenwood.
Yes, yeah.
With the electrical.
Is that, do you think we could have these answers tomorrow or we should just, is that pushing it? We'll just give you some time.
I mean, for the window unit things, I'm pretty sure I could use,
Yeah, you could use the week, yeah.
readily available information. I'll make an assumption that we can talk through,
Yeah.
on what we might think, some of the carpentry work is, for what may or may not be needed to do to sit them in there. But, we'll at least know kind of the lane that we'll be in, and what that looks like, are we looking at something that, is $50,000, is it 100, just to throw an example out there.
Yeah.
So kind of give us the temperature of what that might be.
All right, so everyone said yes for the 21st at 6. In case
Yes.
we need. All right, I think that's it. Yeah, someone want to make a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
Second,
All right, 9:44. All right, everybody, thank you all. We'll talk to you
thank
tomorrow.
you.
Great.
Great
You have a
work,
good night.
everyone.
Bye.
Yep, good night.
Okay. And meeting.